The first thing people noticed every morning wasn't the smell of fresh bread. It was the gossip. In a town like Ravenwood, population just under 8,000, news traveled faster than the church bells on Sunday morning. Before the sun had fully climbed above the maple trees lining Main Street, somebody already knew who'd bought a new truck, whose grandson had come home from college, and which neighbor forgot to take their trash can in the night before. Emily Carter had learned a long time ago that the quickest way to hear every rumor in town was simply to unlock the front door of Carter's Bakery at 6 in the morning. She slid the key into the old brass lock, pushed the door open with her shoulder, and was greeted by the familiar scent she'd loved since childhood. Warm yeast, butter, vanilla, fresh cinnamon. For a brief moment, before customers arrived and life became complicated again, everything felt exactly as it should. She switched on the lights. Soft yellow bulbs warmed the little shop. Rows of breads waited behind the glass. Blueberry muffins cooled on metal racks. Apple pies rested beside lemon tarts. It wasn't a fancy bakery. It didn't need to be. People came because everything tasted homemade. They also came because Emily remembered everyone's favorite order. Mr. Thompson always wanted 2 blueberry muffins. Mrs. Ellis bought rye bread every Wednesday. Old George insisted no one baked cinnamon rolls like Emily. Those little things mattered, especially after the last 2 years. Emily tied her apron around her waist and checked the clock. 6:15. Right on schedule. Footsteps came running down the staircase behind the kitchen. Mom. Emily smiled before she even turned around. A little girl with messy blonde curls flew into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks and pajamas covered in tiny rainbows. 6-year-old Lily Carter threw herself into her mother's arms. Gooding. Emily laughed. Someone's awake early. I smelled cinnamon. You usually do. Lily leaned dramatically over the cooling rack. I think these need to be tested. Emily raised one eyebrow. Be a professional? Exactly. Emily broke off a tiny piece of cinnamon roll and handed it over. Lily closed her eyes as she chewed. So? I think customers will survive. Emily laughed harder than she had in days. It amazed her how one little girl could make every difficult morning feel manageable. Ever since the divorce, Lily had become her reason to keep moving. Some days, her only reason. A bell jingled above the bakery door. Their first customer. Martha Green, of course. The 68-year-old florist entered carrying a bouquet of wildflowers and enough curiosity to fuel the entire town. Morning, girls. Morning, Martha. Emily replied. The usual. You know me too well. Coffee. 1 blueberry muffin. Exactly 1 packet of sugar. Emily had it ready before Martha reached the counter. Martha leaned closer. You hear about the new sheriff. Emily smiled politely. I've been open 15 minutes. Then you're behind already. Emily poured coffee into Martha's favorite mug. What happened? They finally arrived yesterday. They? The sheriff. Emily shrugged. I didn't even know we needed one. Our last sheriff retired. I know that. This one's from Chicago. Emily paused. Chicago? Martha nodded dramatically. Big city detective. Thumb. They say he solved murders. Emily slid the coffee across the counter. I'm sure that's useful. They also say Ace. Martha lowered her voice. Something terrible happened. Emily didn't respond. She knew better. In Ravenwood, silence usually encouraged people to keep talking. Sure enough, they say he left in the middle of the biggest investigation of his career. Emily placed another tray of cookies into the display. I've heard people leave jobs before. Not like this? What do you mean? No one knows. Emily looked up. And somehow everyone knows. Martha pointed a finger. Exactly. Duh. Emily chuckled. Rumors always grew larger than life in small towns. By lunchtime, someone could trip over a garden hose and dinner conversations would be about a vicious snake attack. She wasn't interested. She'd spent too many years listening to people who thought they knew everything. Her ex-husband had been one of them. Ben Carter always had explanations, always had opinions, always knew why Emily's dreams could wait another year, another 5 years, another someday, until one afternoon she'd looked in the mirror and barely recognized the tired woman staring back. The divorce had been ugly, necessary, but ugly. She promised herself afterward. No more complicated men. No more fixing broken people. No more believing someone would eventually become the person they kept promising to be. Life was simpler now. Harder financially, easier emotionally. That was enough. The bakery filled steadily through the morning. Teachers, construction workers, retirees, parents walking children to school. Everyone had something to say about the new sheriff. He barely talks. Looks angry. I heard he arrested someone his first day. My cousin says he used to be famous. My brother says he's dangerous. Emily mostly nodded while boxing pastries. She didn't know the man. She didn't particularly want to. By 11, business slowed enough for her to wipe down the front windows. Across Main Street sat the sheriff's office. The building hadn't changed in decades. White brick. American flag. A pair of flower pots by the entrance. As Emily polished the glass, a black pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out. Broad shoulders. Dark hair touched with a little gray at the temples. Simple jeans. Brown boots. Tan sheriff's jacket. Nothing flashy. Nothing intimidating. Except perhaps the way he carried himself. Like someone who'd spent years watching every doorway before walking through it. He stood beside the truck for a moment, scanning the quiet street. Not suspiciously. Carefully. Almost automatically, Emily looked away before he noticed her watching. She finished cleaning the window. When she glanced back, he was gone. Just another stranger trying to build a new life. Hopefully. The bakery bell jingled again. Moom. Lily burst through the kitchen carrying crayons. Can I draw after lunch? Of course, I'm drawing superheroes. Emily smiled. I thought dinosaurs were your favorite. They still are. What changed? Lily shrugged. Superheroes help people. Emily bent down and kissed the top of her daughter's head. They do. So do bakers. Lily grinned. You make cookies. I do. So you're basically Batman. Emily laughed. I've never heard Batman described that way. The afternoon passed peacefully. Until shortly after 2 o'clock. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. Rain began falling softly. Customers hurried home carrying umbrellas. Emily flipped the sign to closed. Finally, a chance to breathe. She began counting the register while Lily colored quietly at one of the corner tables. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. It should have been peaceful. Instead, Lily suddenly looked up. Mom? Him? Who's that? Emily followed her daughter's gaze. Across the street, the new sheriff stood alone beneath the awning outside his office. Rain splashed just beyond the roofline. He wasn't talking, wasn't looking at anyone. He simply watched the rain fall. For just a second, something about him didn't look dangerous. It looked lonely. Emily quickly dismissed the thought. She knew better than to invent stories about strangers, especially men. Come on, she said softly. Let's finish cleaning up. Lily looked back toward the window. He looked sad. Emily stacked a tray onto the counter. We don't know him, sweetheart. I know, but he still looks sad. Children noticed things adults often ignored. Emily had learned that much. Still, she wasn't interested in becoming part of whatever story followed that man into Ravenwood. Not after everything she'd been through. Not after finally finding peace. She locked the bakery doors. Picked up the day's earnings. Reached for Lily's hand. Outside, the rain had almost stopped. Cars rolled slowly along Main Street. Emily looked both ways. Ready? Ready. They started across the crosswalk together. Halfway across, Emily felt Lily's little hand slip from hers. Lily. She turned. Her daughter wasn't beside her anymore. Instead, the little girl was running straight toward the new sheriff standing outside his office. Emily's heart nearly stopped. Lily. But the 6-year-old reached him before Emily could. The sheriff looked down in surprise as tiny arms wrapped tightly around his leg. The entire street seemed to go silent. Lily looked up at the man everyone in town seemed afraid of, and smiled as if she'd known him forever. "Hi." The sheriff blinked. Lily tilted her head, then said the words that would change all three of their lives. "You look lonely." Before we find out what the mysterious sheriff says next, if you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this every week. Now, let's see why everyone in Ravenwood is so afraid of the man little Lily just hugged. For one long, breathless second, nobody moved. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, and Main Street seemed strangely quiet, as if the whole town had decided to stop and watch the same moment unfold. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. "Lily!" She hurried across the last few steps of the crosswalk, her face burning with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry." The little girl still had both arms wrapped around the sheriff's leg. Emily gently reached for her daughter's shoulder. "Lily, sweetheart, you can't just run up to strangers." "But he's not scary." Emily gave her a look. "We've talked about this." "I know." "Then why did you run away?" Lily looked up at her with complete sincerity. "Because nobody should stand in the rain by themselves." Emily opened her mouth to respond. Nothing came out. The sheriff slowly knelt until he was eye level with Lily. His movements were careful, unhurried, almost as though he were afraid of startling her. He spoke for the first time. His voice was deep but surprisingly gentle. "Your mom's right. You shouldn't run up to people you don't know." Lily studied him for a moment. "You're nice." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "So I've been told." Emily noticed it immediately. It wasn't much. Just the smallest hint of a smile. But judging by everything she'd heard that morning, it might have been the first one he'd shown since arriving in Ravenwood. "I'm really sorry," Emily said again. "She usually doesn't do this." Luke stood. "It's okay." His eyes met Emily's for the first time. Blue, tired, not the tiredness of someone who hadn't slept enough. The kind that settled much deeper, the kind that lived behind a person's eyes. "I'm Luke Dawson, the new sheriff." Emily nodded politely. "Emily Carter, the bakery across the street." "I know." "You do. I bought coffee there this morning." Emily blinked. "You did?" It was 6 o'clock. "You were busy?" She frowned slightly. "I don't remember seeing you." "I prefer that." There it was again. That mystery everyone kept talking about. He answered questions without really answering them. Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Did you like the coffee?" Luke looked down at her. "I did." "What about the cinnamon rolls?" "I haven't tried one." Lily gasped dramatically. "You have to?" Emily couldn't help smiling. "Lily." "What?" "I needs one." Luke looked between the two of them. "I'll stop by tomorrow." "You promise?" "I do." Lily held out her tiny pinky finger. "Pinky promise." Emily nearly apologized again. Instead, something unexpected happened. Luke hooked his little finger around hers. "I promise." Lily beamed as if she'd just solved world peace. "Okay." Emily couldn't remember the last time she'd seen a grown man take a child's promise that seriously. It was unexpected. "Well," Emily said, clearing her throat, "we should get home." Lily waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Sheriff Luke." He gave a small wave back. "Bye, Lily." Mother and daughter walked the rest of the way home in silence. At least, Emily hoped it would stay silent. It didn't. "I like him." Emily sighed. "You just met him." "I know. That's not enough time to know someone." It was enough. Emily smiled despite herself. Children had an astonishing ability to reach conclusions adults spent months avoiding. Sometimes they were wrong. Sometimes they weren't. Their apartment sat above the bakery. It wasn't large. 2 bedrooms. A cozy living room. A tiny kitchen they rarely used because, after spending all day baking downstairs, Emily preferred the simplest dinners imaginable. Tonight it was grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Lily sat swinging her legs beneath the table. "Do you think Sheriff Luke cooks?" Emily laughed. "I have absolutely no idea. He probably burns toast." "What makes you think that?" "He looks like someone who forgets to eat." Emily stopped spreading butter across the bread. That was oddly specific. "Why would you think that?" "He looked lonely." Emily remembered seeing him standing outside the sheriff's office in the rain. Completely alone. She shook the thought away. "Finish your soup? Okay." A few minutes later, Lily spoke again. "Do you think he has kids?" Emily looked up. "I don't know. He'd be a good dad." Emily's heart tightened. She knew why her daughter asked questions like that. Ben Carter had never truly been interested in being a father. He loved showing up for birthday photos. He loved posting Father's Day pictures online. But school plays, homework, bedtime stories, those always seemed to come second. Or third. Or not at all. The divorce agreement gave Ben visitation every other weekend. Some months he remembered. Some months he didn't. Emily had stopped making excuses for him. Children eventually noticed the difference between promises and actions. Lily had noticed. Even if she rarely talked about it. Emily reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "How about after dinner we bake cookies?" Lily smiled instantly. Chocolate chip. Obviously. The sadness disappeared from her face. At least for now. The next morning arrived bright and cool. By 7 o'clock the bakery was already busy. Construction workers lined up for breakfast sandwiches. Teachers grabbed coffee before school. Retirees gathered around the corner table discussing everything from baseball to politics. Emily carried a tray of warm cinnamon rolls into the display case. Almost immediately, Martha Green appeared. Again. Emily laughed. "You have remarkable timing. I have remarkable sources." Emily handed her the usual coffee. "Let me guess. You want to know if the sheriff came in?" Emily nearly dropped the coffee pot. "How did you know about yesterday?" Martha looked offended. "Emily, this is Ravenwood. I wasn't aware hugging the sheriff counted as breaking news." "It wasn't the hug." "What then?" "The fact he smiled." Emily stared. "What?" "Half the town saw it." She blinked. "You're kidding." "I'm not." Martha leaned closer. "People have been trying to get that man to smile for a week." Emily wasn't sure what to make of that. "It wasn't me. It was your daughter." "I know." People noticed. Emily shook her head. This town really needs hobbies. Before Martha could answer, the bell above the bakery door jingled. Conversation throughout the room softened. Not stopped, softened. Emily didn't need to turn around. She already knew. The new sheriff had kept his promise. Luke Dawson stepped inside the bakery. Still wearing his tan sheriff's jacket. Still carrying that quiet seriousness. Only this time, the entire bakery watched him. Luke seemed to notice. He walked calmly to the counter. "Morning." Emily smiled politely. "Good morning." He glanced toward the display case. "I believe someone told me I was required to try a cinnamon roll." A familiar little voice came running from the kitchen. "You came." Lily practically bounced to the front of the bakery. "You kept your promise?" Luke nodded. "I said I would." She pointed proudly toward the display. "My mom makes the best ones." Emily crossed her arms playfully. "My marketing department is 6 years old." Luke's lips twitched again. "I've noticed." Emily carefully boxed one cinnamon roll. "On the house." He immediately reached for his wallet. "I pay for my food. So do most customers. Then treat me like one." Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to people insisting. Especially not after years of Ben expecting discounts simply because they were married. She named the price. Luke paid without looking for change, without asking for anything free, without expecting special treatment because he wore a badge. It was such a small thing. Yet somehow, it stood out. As he turned to leave, Lily called after him. "Don't forget!" Luke looked back. "What? You have to tell me tomorrow if you liked it." He gave a single nod. "I won't forget." Then he walked out into the morning sunlight. The bakery remained strangely quiet for several seconds. Finally, old George spoke from his table near the window. "You know," Emily looked over, "I don't think that man's as cold as everyone says." Then neither did she. But she wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. Because experience had taught her something she never forgot. Sometimes the kindest smile belonged to someone carrying the deepest secrets. And if the rumors about Luke Dawson were even half true, those secrets were almost certainly on their way to Ravenwood. The morning rush came and went the way it always did. Coffee cups emptied. Pastries disappeared from the display. The bell above the bakery door rang so often Emily barely noticed it anymore. By 10:30, the bakery finally grew quiet. Emily wiped flour from the counter and looked toward the corner table. Lily was sitting with a box of crayons, spread around her like a tiny rainbow explosion. Her tongue peeked out in concentration as she colored carefully. "What are you working on?" Emily asked. Lily quickly covered the page. "It's a surprise." "For me?" "No." Emily pretended to gasp. "Well, now I'm jealous. It's for Sheriff Luke." Emily sighed. "Lily." "What?" "You've known him for 1 day, 2 days." Emily smiled despite herself. "You've spoken to him for maybe 5 minutes. 7. You counted." "I think so." Emily shook her head. Children measured friendship differently than adults. Adults looked for history. Children looked for kindness. To Lily, that was enough. Just before lunchtime, Emily noticed the flour was running low. She glanced at the storage shelf. Only 2 bags left. That wouldn't get them through tomorrow. "Lily?" "Yeah. I need to run to Miller's grocery. Can I come?" Of course. 5 minutes later, they stepped out into the warm afternoon sunshine. Ravenwood was exactly the kind of town magazines loved to photograph. Brick sidewalks, American flags hanging from old storefronts, flower baskets overflowing with bright summer blooms, people who greeted each other by name. It felt safe, predictable. After everything the last few years had brought, Emily appreciated predictable. As they crossed Main Street, Lily slowed down. "Mom? What is it?" "Can we stop for 1 minute?" Emily followed her daughter's gaze. "The sheriff's office." She laughed softly. "You really want to see if he's there?" I forgot my surprise. Emily looked down. Lily was holding the folded drawing against her chest. "You brought it with you." "I didn't want it to bend." Emily hesitated. This wasn't really necessary. It was just a drawing. Nothing more. 1 minute. I promise. They climbed the short steps leading to the sheriff's office. The front door stood open. Inside, the building looked exactly how Emily imagined a small, town sheriff's office would. Wooden floors. Old photographs on the walls. A large American flag. A coffee maker that had clearly survived several decades. Deputy Sarah Miller looked up from behind the reception desk. She smiled warmly. "Well, hello." Lily waved enthusiastically. "Hey." Sarah smiled. "You must be the famous cinnamon roll inspector." Emily blinked. "Famous." Sarah laughed. "The sheriff talks." Emily found that difficult to believe. "He does. Not much. But he mentioned someone named Lily." Lily grinned proudly. "I knew he'd remember me." Sarah pointed toward a closed office door. "He's finishing paperwork." Almost as if he'd heard his name. The door opened. Luke stepped into the hallway holding a stack of files. He stopped when he saw them, for just a fraction of a second. He looked surprised. Then Lily ran forward. This time, she stopped 2 feet away. "Mom says I have to ask before I hug people." Luke looked toward Emily. She smiled apologetically. I'm trying to teach boundaries. I think that's wise. Lily held up the folded paper. I made you something. Luke carefully accepted it. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He unfolded the drawing. Emily leaned slightly to see it. It showed 3 people. One little girl. One woman with long brown hair. One very tall man wearing a sheriff's hat that looked much too large. Above them was a bright yellow sun. Below them, a bakery. Luke stared at the picture longer than Emily expected. Then he noticed something. There are 3 cookies. Lily nodded. 1 for each person. Luke swallowed. His voice became unusually quiet. It's beautiful. You really think so? I do. Emily watched something change in his expression. Not happiness exactly. Something softer. As though a wall inside him had shifted ever so slightly. I'll put it in my office. Really? Really? Lily practically bounced with excitement. Emily laughed. I think you've made her entire week. Luke folded the drawing carefully. Not quickly. Not carelessly. Like it was something fragile. Something valuable. He disappeared into his office for a moment. Curiosity got the better of Emily. She glanced through the partially open door. Luke wasn't putting the drawing into a drawer. He wasn't setting it aside. He picked up a small frame that had been sitting empty on the corner of his desk. Removed the backing. Placed Lily's drawing inside. Then set it where he could see it. Emily looked away before he noticed she'd seen. Something about that simple gesture stayed with her. People didn't frame things they intended to throw away. On the walk back to the bakery, Lily skipped happily beside her. I told you he'd like it. You were right. He looked happier. Emily thought about that. He had. Only a little. But enough that she'd noticed. What do you think made him sad? Lily asked. Emily took a slow breath. I don't know. Do grown-ups cry? Sometimes. Do sheriffs cry? Emily smiled. I imagine they do. Even brave ones. The bravest people usually do. Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. Late that afternoon, the bakery emptied once again. Emily stood outside watering the flower boxes beneath the front windows. Across the street, she noticed Luke leaving the sheriff's office. Instead of driving away, he walked. No destination seemed obvious. Just walking. Hands in his jacket pockets. Head slightly lowered. Almost like someone trying to think. Without really meaning to, Emily watched. He stopped outside the town memorial. A simple stone monument honoring local veterans, firefighters, and police officers who had lost their lives over the years. Luke stood there quietly, nearly 5 minutes. Not moving. Not speaking. Just reading the names carved into the stone. There was something deeply personal in the way he looked at it. Almost becful. As if he understood loss better than most people. Emily felt an unexpected ache in her chest. Who had he lost? A partner? A friend? Family? The rumors suddenly felt smaller. More shallow. Whatever had happened in Chicago, it clearly hadn't left him untouched. That evening, after dinner, Emily tucked Lily into bed. Mom. Yes. Do you think Sheriff Luke eats dinner alone? Emily sat on the edge of the bed. I don't know. If he does. She hugged her stuffed rabbit. That's kind of sad. Emily brushed a curl away from her daughter's forehead. It is. Wes should invite him. Emily laughed. I don't think we're ready for that. Why not? Because life wasn't that simple. Because men came with complications. Because trust took time. Because she'd spent years rebuilding the little piece she'd finally found. Instead, she simply kissed Lily's forehead. Go to sleep. Okay. Within minutes, Lily was asleep. Emily quietly closed the bedroom door. She walked into the living room and looked out the window overlooking Main Street. Across the street, the sheriff's office was still lit. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Everyone else had gone home. Luke Dawson was still working. Or maybe just avoiding an empty house. Emily caught herself staring and pulled the curtains closed. This isn't your problem, she whispered to herself. She meant it. She truly did. But as she got ready for bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the empty picture frame that wasn't empty anymore. Somehow, the very first thing decorating the new sheriff's office was a little girl's drawing of three people standing together outside a bakery, and for reasons Emily couldn't quite explain. That realization lingered with her far longer than it should have. The next morning began like every other. Emily arrived downstairs before sunrise, tied on her apron, and started mixing bread dough while soft country music played through the old radio in the kitchen. It was her favorite part of the day. No customers, no conversations, just the rhythm of measuring flour, kneading dough, and watching the bakery slowly come to life. Upstairs, she heard little footsteps. A moment later, Lily appeared in the doorway, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, Mommy." Emily smiled. "Morning, sleepyhead." Lily climbed onto her favorite stool. "Can I help? You know the rules. I wash my hands first. And I don't eat cookie dough before breakfast." Emily laughed. "You're learning." "I already knew that." "Oh, I just hoped you'd forget." Emily couldn't help laughing louder. Some mornings, Lily made it impossible to stay in a bad mood. By 8 o'clock, the bakery was bustling. The usual customers filled the tables. Old George argued with Mr. Thompson about baseball. Mrs. Ellis complimented Emily's blueberry muffins for what felt like the 100th time. Everything felt wonderfully ordinary. Until the front door opened. Conversation faded. Luke Dawson stepped inside. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Beside him walked an elderly woman Emily had never seen before. She looked frightened, confused. She clutched a worn handbag tightly against her chest. Luke guided her gently toward an empty table. His voice was calm. "Take your time, Mrs. Parker. I'm not rushing you." Emily immediately walked over. "Is everything okay?" Luke nodded. She wandered away from Maple Grove Assisted Living. Emily's expression softened. "Oh, we found her walking along Route 12. A Mrs. Parker looked around the bakery with watery eyes. "I used to come here." Emily smiled warmly. "Then you're in exactly the right place." "I am." "You are." Emily poured her a cup of tea. "No charge." Parker looked at the steaming cup as though it held precious memories. "My husband always ordered cinnamon rolls." Emily glanced toward Luke. He quietly stepped back, allowing Emily to sit beside the elderly woman instead. There was no rush, no impatience, no sign that he wanted recognition for bringing her safely back. He simply waited. 5 minutes later, an employee from the assisted living home hurried inside, visibly relieved. "There you are." Mrs. Parker smiled faintly. "I got lost." The caregiver hugged her gently. "It's okay. We've been looking everywhere." Luke handed over a brief report. "She was safe the entire time." The caregiver turned to Emily. "Thank you." Emily shook her head. "Thank the sheriff." Everyone looked toward Luke. He was already walking toward the door, as though helping people was simply another item on today's list. No applause required. After he left, Martha Green leaned across the counter. "I'll admit." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What? That's not what I expected." "Meaning?" "I expected someone—" She searched for the word. "Hard." Emily looked through the front window. Luke was helping Mrs. Parker into the assisted living van before quietly returning to his truck. He didn't seem hard. New. Martha sighed. "Maybe we've judged him too quickly." Emily didn't answer. She'd been wondering the same thing. Around lunchtime, business slowed enough for Emily to step outside and water the flower baskets again. Across the street, Luke was unloading boxes from the back of his truck. Not evidence boxes. Books. Several cardboard boxes filled with books. Deputy Sarah opened the office door. "You finally brought them." Luke nodded. "Took longer than I expected." Emily watched from across the street. There had to be 50 books. History, crime investigations, law, a few novels, one large box labeled family photos. Before she could stop herself, She looked a little longer. Luke picked up that box differently, more carefully. Like whatever was inside mattered more than everything else. He disappeared into the sheriff's office. A few moments later, the blinds in his office closed. Emily turned back toward the bakery. She felt oddly guilty. She wasn't trying to pry. At least, she told herself she wasn't. That afternoon, rain returned. Not a heavy storm. Just the gentle summer rain that seemed to visit Ravenwood every few days. Business slowed even more. Emily decided it was the perfect excuse to bake another batch of chocolate chip cookies. The smell drifted out onto Main Street. Lily stood proudly beside the cooling rack. "These are our best batch." "You say that every time." "Because every batch is the best." Emily smiled. "That's a nice way to look at life." The bakery bell chimed. Emily looked up. Luke stood in the doorway. Drops of rain clung to the shoulders of his jacket. Lily's face lit up. "You came back." Luke held up an empty white bakery box. "I was told the cinnamon roll wasn't enough." Emily laughed. "So now you're taking orders from a 6-year-old. "It appears I am." Lily pointed dramatically toward the cookies. "You need one." Luke looked at Emily. "Should I argue?" "You'll lose." "I suspected as much." Emily placed 3 warm cookies into a fresh paper bag. "This one's on the house." Luke reached for his wallet again. Emily raised a hand. "No. You paid yesterday. This one's because you helped Mrs. Parker." His hand stopped. "You heard about that? It's a small town." A faint smile crossed his face. "So I've noticed." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was unexpectedly peaceful. Luke finally broke it. "You have a nice place here." Emily looked around the bakery. "It belonged to my parents." "You grew up here." "My whole life." He nodded slowly. "I've never lived anywhere this quiet." "You'll get used to it." "I'm not sure I want to." She looked at him curiously. "You don't?" "I think I'd rather appreciate it." Emily wasn't expecting that answer. Neither, apparently, was Lily. She grinned. "I told you he was nice." Luke looked down at her. "You've been saying that to everyone." Emily covered her face with one hand. Lily paused. "What?" Luke chuckled softly. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakably a laugh. Old George looked up from his newspaper. Mrs. Ellis smiled into her coffee. Even Martha, sitting by the window with her knitting, glanced over with wide eyes. The mysterious sheriff had just laughed. Emily noticed something else. When he laughed, the sadness didn't disappear. It simply became a little easier to carry. Luke thanked them for the cookies and headed toward the door. Just before stepping outside, he paused. He turned back toward Emily. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making this town feel." He searched for the right word. "Welcoming." Then he left before she could answer. Emily watched the door close behind him. She stood there for several seconds, the warm bag of cookies still in her hands. Lily tugged gently on her apron. "Mum. I think he's smiling more." Emily looked through the rain-speckled window at the sheriff walking back across the street. He was. Just a little. She smiled without realizing it. What Emily didn't see was the dark gray SUV parked half a block away. Its engine idled quietly. The driver never got out, never came inside. He simply watched Luke Dawson through the windshield, then slowly lifted a phone, snapped a photograph, and made a single call. "We found him." The line went silent for a moment. Then a voice answered. "Don't make a move yet. I want to know who he's getting close to." The call ended. The SUV pulled away into the rain. Across the street, Luke had no idea that the past he'd traveled nearly 1,000 miles to escape had just found Ravenwood. The rain had stopped sometime during the night. By sunrise, Ravenwood looked freshly washed. Water still clung to the maple leaves lining Main Street, and the sidewalks shimmered in the early morning light. Emily unlocked the bakery at exactly 6 o'clock. Some habits never changed. She switched on the lights, started the coffee, and slid the first trays of croissants into the display case. Upstairs, Lily was still asleep. For once, Emily smiled to herself. It wouldn't last. Right on cue, she heard tiny footsteps racing down the stairs. "Mum, there she is." Lily hugged her around the waist. "I had the best dream." "Oh, Sheriff Luke learned how to bake." Emily laughed. "Did he burn everything?" "No. He made dinosaur cookies." Emily raised an eyebrow. Dinosaur cookies. They were very realistic. Emily couldn't argue with dream logic. "Maybe we'll suggest that someday." The morning crowd arrived as usual. Teachers, truck drivers, retirees, parents grabbing breakfast before work. Life in Ravenwood followed its familiar rhythm. Then the bakery door opened. Luke stepped inside. He wasn't wearing his sheriff's jacket today. Just a navy blue button-up shirt with the badge clipped to his belt. For the first time, he looked less like the sheriff, more like an ordinary man. Lily spotted him immediately. "You came back." "I said I would." "And?" Luke held up the empty cookie bag. "I have a report." Lily climbed onto one of the stools, suddenly very serious. "We're listening." Luke nodded solemnly. The chocolate chip cookies were excellent. Lily grinned. "I knew it." The cinnamon roll was also excellent. "I knew that too." Luke paused. "But..." Lily gasped dramatically. "But... I may have gained 2 pounds." The little girl burst into laughter. Emily shook her head. "I should probably apologize." "I don't think so." Luke smiled. "I haven't eaten this well in years." Emily couldn't explain why that sentence stayed with her. Maybe because it sounded honest, not polite. Honest. "What can I get you today?" she asked. "The breakfast sandwich. And coffee. If you're making it." She smiled. "I usually do." As she prepared his order, Luke looked around the bakery. His gaze stopped on an old photograph hanging beside the register. A younger Emily stood between an older couple, all three covered in flour and laughing. "My parents," Emily explained. Luke nodded. "They look proud." They were. "They started the bakery. My grandparents did. My parents expanded it. And now it's yours." Emily placed his breakfast on the counter. "I'm just trying to keep it alive." "You've done more than that." She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "This place feels..." He searched for the right word. "Important." Emily frowned slightly. "It's just a bakery." Luke glanced around the room. Old George was teasing Martha over her crossword puzzle. 2 high school students were sharing a muffin before class. A young mother bounced a baby on her knee while sipping coffee. It isn't just a bakery. It's where people start their mornings. It's where neighbors meet. It's where people feel. He smiled faintly. At home. Emily didn't know what to say. No one had ever described it that way. Especially not Ben. To her ex-husband, the bakery had always been the little shop. Something temporary. Something she'd eventually outgrow. Luke had spent less than a week in town, and somehow understood what the bakery meant better than the man she'd been married to for 15 years. Around noon, business slowed. Luke stood to leave. Before he reached the door, Deputy Sarah hurried inside. She looked slightly out of breath. "Sorry to interrupt." Luke turned. "What happened?" "There's been a break-in." "Where?" "Henderson Farm." Luke's expression became all business. "Anything stolen?" "They're not sure yet." He nodded once. "I'm on my way." He looked back toward Emily. "Thanks for breakfast." Then he was gone. Emily watched through the window as the sheriff's truck disappeared down the road. Lily climbed onto the stool beside her. "He helps everybody." "He does. Even cows." Emily laughed. "I don't think cows called him. They would have if they had phones." The afternoon passed quietly. At 3 o'clock, Emily carried 2 boxes of fresh bread into the front display. As she glanced outside, she noticed the same gray SUV parked across the street. It hadn't been there that morning. Dark windows. Out of state license plate. Engine off. No one getting out. She frowned. Tourists usually park closer to the park, not across from the sheriff's office. She watched for another minute. Nothing. Maybe she was imagining things. She went back to work. Just before closing, the bakery door opened again. This time it wasn't Luke. It was Tom Reynolds, the owner of the hardware store and a retired deputy. Tom rarely looked nervous. Today he did. "You got a minute, Emily?" "Of course." Tom lowered his voice. "Have you seen anyone unusual around town?" Emily hesitated. "What do you mean?" "People we don't recognize." She thought for a moment. There was a gray SUV parked across the street most of the afternoon. Tom's face changed. "You noticed it too?" Emily blinked. "You know whose it is?" Tom shook his head. "No. But I've seen it twice today." He looked toward the sheriff's office. "Luke, no." "I don't think so." Tom nodded slowly. "I'll mention it." Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Is something wrong?" Tom forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Probably nothing." It sounded exactly like the kind of answer people gave when they didn't want to worry someone. That evening, Emily and Lily walked to the small playground behind the town library. The swings squeaked softly in the breeze. Children laughed. Parents chatted on nearby benches. For the first time all day, Emily relaxed. Lily raced toward the monkey bars. "Watch me!" "I'm watching." While halfway across, Lily lost her grip. Emily's heart jumped. Before she could even stand, a pair of strong hands caught Lily before she hit the ground. "You okay?" Lily looked up. "Sheriff Luke?" Luke gently set her on her feet. "I think superheroes are supposed to land on their feet." "I almost did." "You almost did." Emily hurried over. "Thank you." Luke smiled. "Good timing. Were you just passing by?" "I try to walk through the parks in the evenings." He looked around at the families. "It reminds people they're not alone." Emily found herself smiling. "That's a good reason." Lily tugged on Luke's sleeve. "Can you push me on the swing?" Emily immediately opened her mouth. Before she could answer, Luke looked at her instead. "Only if your mom says it's okay." Emily appreciated that. He hadn't assumed. He'd asked. She nodded. "I think that would be fine." For the next 10 minutes, Luke pushed Lily on the swing, not too high, not too low, just enough to make her laugh. Emily sat on a nearby bench watching. Other parents smiled as they walked past. To anyone looking, they probably resembled a normal little family spending an evening at the park. The thought caught Emily completely off guard. She quickly pushed it away. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Luke's arm. "See you tomorrow." He smiled. "I hope so." As Emily and Lily walked home, neither noticed the gray SUV parked just beyond the library parking lot. Inside, the driver lowered a pair of binoculars. He wasn't watching the playground anymore. He was studying photographs on his phone. One showed Luke leaving the sheriff's office. Another showed him inside the bakery. The newest one showed Luke pushing Lily on the swing while Emily watched from the bench. The man quietly muttered to himself, "So, they've already become important to you." He slipped the phone into his pocket, started the engine, and drove away. Far behind him, Ravenwood settled into another peaceful evening, completely unaware that someone had just begun turning its happiest moments into a weapon. Saturday mornings were different in Ravenwood. Nobody seemed to be in a hurry. Families lingered over breakfast. Children rode their bicycles down Main Street. The farmers' market filled the town square with fresh peaches, homemade jams, flowers, and the sound of old friends catching up after another busy week. For Emily Carter, Saturday was always her busiest day. By 7:30, every table inside Carter's bakery was occupied. The line stretched almost to the front door. "I'm out of blueberry muffins," Emily called toward the kitchen. "I've got another tray," answered 16-year-old Ava, the high school student who helped on weekends. Lily stood behind the counter wearing an apron, almost as big as she was. Her official job was placing napkins into paper bags. Her unofficial job was talking to every customer who walked through the door. Mrs. Ellis smiled as Lily handed her a bag. "Thank you, sweetheart. Have a nice Saturday?" "I plan to." Old George chuckled from the end of the counter. "I think you've got yourself some competition, Emily." Emily laughed. "I know. In another 10 years, she'll own the place." Lily looked horrified. "No." Everyone looked at her. "I'm going to own the bakery." She pointed toward the sheriff's office across the street. "And Sheriff Luke's office." The bakery erupted in laughter. Emily covered her face. "Oh, honey." "What? You can't own the sheriff's office." "Why not?" "Because that's not how government works." Lily frowned. "That's silly." Around 9 o'clock, the bakery door opened. Luke stepped inside. This time he wasn't alone. Deputy Sarah followed behind him. She looked around in amazement. "I've been trying to get him to come here all week." Luke looked mildly embarrassed. "I've been busy." Sarah smiled at Emily. "I'm Sarah Miller. We've met briefly." Emily nodded. "It's nice to officially meet you." Sarah leaned closer across the counter. "I'm just going to say what everyone else is thinking." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Oh. I haven't seen him smile this much since he got here." Luke sighed. "You don't have enough paperwork to do." Sarah grinned. "I always make time." Lily appeared beside the counter as though she'd been waiting. "Sheriff Luke, good morning." "You brought your friend." "I did." Lily offered Sarah a chocolate chip cookie. "You can have one?" Sarah accepted it dramatically. "Well, now I feel honored." Luke reached for his wallet. Emily held up a hand. "I already know. I still pay." "You always do." "I always will." Sarah looked between them. "I think I've walked into an argument that's happened before." Emily smiled. "Several times." Luke paid for breakfast. Just before he carried the tray to a table, Lily tugged gently on his sleeve. "I forgot to ask." "What? When's your birthday?" Luke blinked. "My birthday?" "Yeah." He thought for a moment. "October."
Duff.
"What day?" "The 22nd." She nodded seriously. "Okay." Emily narrowed her eyes. "What are you planning?" "It's a surprise." Luke looked amused. "I'll be worried until October now." "You should." An hour later, the morning rush finally slowed. Emily stepped outside with a fresh pot of flowers for the bakery window. The farmer's market filled the square across the street. Musicians played acoustic guitar beneath the gazebo. Children chased bubbles floating through the air. It was one of the reasons she'd never wanted to leave Ravenwood. Life felt gentler here. She noticed Luke walking through the market. Not on patrol, simply talking to people. He stopped to help an elderly man carry 2 heavy bags to his truck. A few minutes later, he knelt beside a little boy who had fallen off his bicycle. Emily couldn't hear the conversation. She watched Luke check the scraped knee, smile, and hand the boy a sheriff's department sticker. The tears disappeared almost instantly. The little boy proudly stuck the badge on his shirt. Luke ruffled his hair before continuing on his way. Emily smiled to herself. The man the town had feared seemed to spend most of his day helping people with ordinary things. "Mom!" Emily turned. Lily stood at the bakery door. "Can we go to the market?" "As soon as I finish this." 5 minutes later, mother and daughter wandered between the rows of vendors. Lily sampled strawberries. Emily bought fresh honey. They stopped to admire handmade quilts displayed outside the church. "You've got good timing." Emily turned. Luke stood beside a stall selling homemade jams. He held 2 jars. "I'm trying to decide." Emily glanced at the labels. "Blackberry or peach." She smiled. "Blackberry." No hesitation. Not even a little. He placed the blackberry jam into his basket. "I'll trust the local expert." Lily tugged on Emily's hand. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's 10:30 in the morning." "So?" Luke tried very hard not to smile. Emily caught it anyway. "You don't encourage her." I haven't said anything. You or thing have been. Lily pointed triumphantly. See. Emily laughed. Both of you are impossible. Just then, a loud bark echoed across the square. A golden retriever had slipped its leash and was running between the market stalls. People stepped aside as baskets tipped over and apples rolled across the pavement.
Oh no!
A little girl burst into tears. My dog. Before anyone else reacted, Luke calmly stepped into the open space ahead of the dog. He didn't chase it. He didn't shout. Instead, he crouched down, held out one hand, and waited. The excited retriever slowed. Its tail wagged uncertainly. Luke spoke so quietly Emily couldn't hear the words. Seconds later the dog trotted the rest of the way to him. Luke scratched behind its ears. Good boy. The little girl ran over and wrapped her arms around the dog. Thank you. Luke smiled. I think he just wanted to say hello to everyone. The crowd laughed. The tension disappeared. Lily whispered to Emily, I told you. Told me what? He's nice to everybody. Emily looked across the market at Luke handing the leash back to the grateful family. She couldn't argue. Not anymore. As the market began winding down, Luke checked his watch. I should get back. Emily nodded. Busy afternoon. Paperwork. She laughed. I thought sheriffs spent their time chasing bad guys. I spend most of my time chasing paperwork. Lily sighed dramatically. Being a grown-up sounds boring. Luke smiled. It has its moments. He started toward the sheriff's office. Halfway across the square, he stopped. His expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough for Emily to notice. He was looking toward the far end of Main Street. Emily followed his gaze. A dark gray SUV rolled slowly past the market. The driver never looked toward the vendors. Never stopped. Never parked. The vehicle simply continued down the street. Luke watched until it disappeared around the corner. You okay? Emily asked quietly. He turned back. For the first time since she'd met him, the warmth had vanished from his eyes. It was probably nothing. Probably. But he didn't sound convinced. Neither was Emily. She watched him walk back toward the sheriff's office. His shoulders seemed a little tenser than before. A little more alert. Like someone who had just recognized a face in a crowd. Or remembered something he'd spent years trying to forget. Inside the SUV, parked 3 blocks away, a man lowered a camera with a long lens. He looked at the newest photographs. Luke talking with Emily. Luke laughing with Lily. Luke standing in the middle of the farmer's market. He typed a short message into his phone. He's settling in. The reply came less than a minute later. Good, don't lose sight of him. The man smiled faintly. Oh, I don't plan to. Sunday mornings were the only mornings Emily didn't open the bakery before sunrise. The shop stayed closed until 9. It had been her father's rule. Everyone deserves one slow morning a week. Even after he passed away, Emily had never changed it. Some traditions deserved protecting. She and Lily ate pancakes upstairs in their pajamas while sunlight poured through the kitchen window. Lily covered hers with enough maple syrup to make Emily raise an eyebrow. I don't think there's any pancake under there. There is. Barely. Lily giggled. It's hiding. Emily reached across the table and wiped a spot of syrup from her daughter's cheek. What are we doing after breakfast? We're going to church? Then. We'll open the bakery. Lily nodded thoughtfully. And then. And Emily laughed. You really like having a plan. I do. She hesitated for a second. Can we invite Sheriff Luke? Emily nearly dropped her coffee mug. Invite him. Where? To my birthday. Emily blinked. Ani, my birthday is next month. I know. I have to invite people early. Emily smiled. You've clearly been thinking about this. I made a list. A list. Lily jumped off her chair and ran to her bedroom. A few seconds later, she returned holding a sheet of paper covered in colorful crayon handwriting. Emily looked down. Birthday list Grandma Ann, Mrs. Ellis, Old George, Miss Sarah, Sheriff Luke, Mom, Emily laughed. I'm glad I made the list. You always make the list. She scanned it again. You invited half the town? Not half. I counted. Emily shook her head. We'll talk about birthday invitations later. When? Soon. Lily looked satisfied enough with that answer. After church, Main Street slowly came back to life. The bakery filled with its usual Sunday crowd. Families stopped in after the morning service. Children pointed excitedly at cookies in the display case. Emily loved Sundays. People weren't rushing to work. They stayed. Laughed. For a little while, everyone seemed lighter. Around 11, the familiar bell above the door chimed. Luke stepped inside. He looked as though he'd already been working for hours. His sleeves were rolled up. A notebook rested beneath one arm. Lily spotted him immediately. I was just talking about you. Luke stopped. Were you? She nodded enthusiastically. I have something important to ask. Emily quickly interrupted. Lily. It's okay? Luke said with a small smile. What is it? Lily took a deep breath. My birthday is next month. It is. I'll be 7. Luke nodded seriously. That's an important age. It is. She folded her hands behind her back. I was wondering. Emily silently prayed her daughter wouldn't. If you'd come to my birthday party. There it was. The bakery became unusually quiet. Not silent, just quiet enough that Emily suddenly became aware of every coffee cup and every chair scraping against the floor. She immediately stepped in. Lily? Sweetheart. It's all right, Luke said gently. He crouched until he was eye level with her. I'd be honored. Lily's entire face lit up. Really? If I'm not working? Emily exhaled, relieved by the careful answer. When is it? Lily looked toward her mother. Emily answered. The second Saturday next month. Luke thought for a moment. I'll write it down. He actually opened his notebook and made a note. Lily looked as though she'd just won first prize at the county fair. You remembered. I told you. I don't forget promises. Emily noticed something again. He never made promises casually. Every word seemed deliberate. Almost as if he'd learned the hard way not to promise something he couldn't keep. A little later, after Luke had taken his coffee to a corner table, Emily carried over a warm slice of apple pie. You forgot this. I didn't order pie. I know. It's fresh. Luke looked at it. I should pay? You already bought breakfast. I still should. Emily smiled. Today it's my decision. He studied her for a moment before nodding. Thank you. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The comfortable silence surprised Emily. She usually felt awkward sitting with people she barely knew. Not today. Finally, Luke looked toward the front window. You've built something special here. Emily followed his gaze. The bakery buzzed with conversation. An elderly couple shared a cinnamon roll. A young father bounced his toddler on one knee. Old George was pretending not to lose another game of checkers. It wasn't just me, Emily said quietly. My parents built most of it. You kept it alive. She smiled faintly. Some days it doesn't feel that way. It does from where I'm sitting. Emily looked down at her coffee. You always see the good in people. Luke was quiet for a long moment. No. So why me? He leaned back slightly. Because this bakery isn't successful by accident. She frowned. What do you mean? I watch people. Occupational habit. They walk in stressed. They leave smiling. That doesn't happen because of bread. Emily laughed softly. No. It happens because of the person behind the counter. Emily wasn't used to compliments. Not sincere ones. Ben's compliments had almost always come with conditions. You'd be prettier if... The bakery's doing all right, but... Maybe someday... Luke simply stated what he believed, nothing more, nothing less. It felt... different. The bakery bell rang again. Deputy Sarah hurried inside. She looked directly at Luke. There you are. Luke stood immediately. What happened? Sarah lowered her voice. I need a minute. Emily politely stepped away. The two deputies moved near the front door. They spoke quietly. Luke's expression changed. The warmth disappeared from his face. His jaw tightened. He asked Sarah a short question. She nodded. Emily couldn't hear the words, but she saw enough to know something was wrong. Luke returned to the table. "I'm sorry. I have to go." Emily nodded. "Everything okay?" He forced a small smile. "I hope so." He picked up his notebook, left money beneath his coffee cup, then hurried out with Sarah. Emily watched through the front window as they climbed into separate patrol vehicles. Both drove away faster than she'd ever seen in town. That afternoon, business slowed again. Emily was wiping down the front counter when Tom Reynolds walked in. He wasn't there for coffee. She could tell immediately. "You heard." "Heard what?" Tom looked around to make sure no customers were close enough to overhear. "Somebody broke into the old motel outside town last night." Emily frowned. "I thought that place was empty." "It is. So why would anyone?" Tom lowered his voice even further. "The sheriff found signs somebody's been staying there." Emily felt a small chill. "Homeless?" Tom slowly shook his head. "Nope." "Professional." "What does that mean?" "It means whoever they are, they don't want anyone knowing they're there." Emily instinctively looked toward the sheriff's office across the street. The building sat quiet, empty, for the first time since Luke had arrived. She found herself hoping he was all right. She didn't even realize she'd begun worrying about him. Not until that moment. Late that evening, after the bakery had closed and Lily was asleep upstairs, Emily stepped onto the small balcony outside her apartment. The night air was cool, peaceful. Across the street, the sheriff's office lights were still on. She smiled faintly. Working late again. Just then, those lights suddenly went dark. A few seconds later, Luke walked outside. He looked up and noticed Emily standing on the balcony. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then he gave a small wave. Emily smiled and waved back. It lasted only a second. A simple neighborly gesture. Nothing more. Neither of them noticed the camera hidden inside the parked gray SUV at the end of the block. The shutter clicked twice. One photograph. Then another. The man behind the camera zoomed in on the image. Luke looking up. Emily smiling down from the balcony. He sent the photos immediately. This time, the reply came almost instantly. "She's becoming leverage." The man slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Looks like it's time to stop watching and start making introductions." Monday mornings always felt different. The easy pace of the weekend disappeared. Cars filled Main Street before sunrise. Teachers hurried toward the elementary school. Parents balanced coffee cups in one hand and sleepy children in the other. Emily had barely unlocked the bakery when the first customer walked in. By 7:30, every table was full. She moved from the espresso machine to the pastry case without stopping. 2 cinnamon rolls. Coming right up. 1 large coffee. Anything else? Blueberry muffin. You got it. It was organized chaos. Exactly the way she liked it. Lily sat at her little corner table coloring another picture. This one showed a bakery, a sheriff's truck, and a dog wearing a cowboy hat. Emily decided not to ask. Some things were better left unexplained. The front door opened. Luke stepped inside. He looked tired. More tired than usual. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. "Morning," Emily said. "Morning. You look like you didn't sleep." "I slept." She tilted her head. "That's not what I asked." For the first time, he smiled before answering. "Let's just say paperwork 1. Emily handed him a steaming cup of coffee before he even ordered it. "The usual." He nodded gratefully. "You know, I think you're starting to read my mind." "I just pay attention." Luke accepted the cup. "I appreciate it." Before either of them could say another word, the bakery door opened again. A man in an expensive charcoal gray suit stepped inside. He looked completely out of place. Early 40s. Perfectly polished shoes. neatly trimmed beard. The kind of watch that probably cost more than Emily's car. He paused just inside the doorway, slowly looking around the bakery. Not admiring it, studying it. Emily smiled politely. "Good morning." The man returned the smile. "Morning." His voice carried a faint Chicago accent. "I've been driving all night. I could definitely use coffee." Emily poured a fresh cup. "What brings you to Ravenwood?" "Business." He accepted the coffee without taking his eyes off the room. "Quiet little town." "It usually is." He nodded thoughtfully. "I can see why people like it." Emily noticed Luke. The sheriff had gone completely still. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes locked onto the stranger. The stranger finally looked toward Luke. For just a heartbeat. Neither man spoke. Then the stranger smiled. "Morning, Sheriff." Luke answered evenly. "Morning." Emily glanced between them. "You two know each other?" The stranger laughed softly. "Not exactly." Luke set his coffee down. "What can I do for you?" "I'm just passing through. Thought I'd stop for breakfast." Luke held his gaze. "For breakfast?" "That's right." The silence stretched just a little too long. Emily suddenly felt as though she'd walked into the middle of a conversation that had started years ago. Finally, Luke spoke. "If you need anything while you're in town..." The man smiled. "I'll be sure to let you know." He picked up his coffee, added a blueberry muffin, paid in cash, then chose a table by the front window. He never opened his phone, never read a newspaper, never touched the muffin. He simply sat there, watching the street. Lily wandered over carrying her drawing. Emily noticed too late. "Lily." The little girl stopped beside the stranger. "Hi." The man looked down and smiled warmly. "Hello. I'm Lily. It's nice to meet you, Lily." She held up her picture. "I'm drawing dinosaurs." "I can see that. They're friendly dinosaurs. I like friendly dinosaurs." Emily hurried over. "I'm sorry." She likes talking to everyone. The man chuckled. "I've noticed." He looked at Lily. "Your mom makes wonderful coffee. She makes everything." Emily gently took Lily's hand. "Come help me in the kitchen." As they walked away, she glanced back. The man was no longer looking at his coffee. He was watching Luke. An hour later, the breakfast rush finally slowed. The stranger stood, straightened his jacket, walked toward the counter. "Thank you." Emily smiled. "Have a safe trip. I'm sure I'll be around." He placed a business card on the counter. "If you ever visit Chicago, I own a consulting firm." Emily glanced at it. "Michael Grant Security Consulting, thank you." He nodded politely, then walked out. Emily watched him climb into a dark gray SUV parked across the street. The same SUV she'd seen several times before. The engine started. But instead of driving away immediately, the vehicle remained parked. For almost another minute. Then it slowly pulled away. Luke hadn't moved. He was staring through the window long after the SUV disappeared around the corner. Emily quietly walked over. "You know him?" Luke didn't answer immediately. "I've seen him before." "Where?" "In Chicago." Emily folded her arms. "He didn't seem like he was just passing through." "No, he wasn't." She waited. Luke remained silent. "I don't suppose you're going to explain." "I can't." "Can't. Or won't." Met her eyes. Ugh. Emily studied his face. There wasn't anger there, or fear. Just concern. The kind that made her stomach tighten. "Is this about why you left Chicago?" Luke looked away. "I wish it wasn't." The bakery phone rang. Emily answered while Luke quietly picked up his untouched breakfast. "Carter's Bakery." A cheerful voice came through the receiver. "Emily." It was Principal Nancy Collins from Ravenwood Elementary. "Good morning, Nancy. I'm calling about Family Day this Friday." Emily smiled. "Oh, that's this week. We're inviting parents or special adults to have lunch with the students." Emily looked toward Lily, who was proudly arranging cookies in the display case. "She'll love that. Wonderful. We'll see you Friday." Emily hung up. Luke was heading toward the door. Luke. He turned. She hesitated. I hope. Whatever this is. She glanced toward the street where the SUV had disappeared. I hope you're not facing it alone. For the first time, the mask he'd worn since arriving in Ravenwood slipped, just enough for her to see the exhaustion underneath. I've been facing it alone for a long time. Then he gave her a small, grateful smile. He looked around the bakery. This town is making that a little harder. Emily wasn't entirely sure what he meant. She only knew she didn't like the sadness in his voice. Luke walked out into the sunshine. Across the street, he paused before entering the sheriff's office. He instinctively scanned both ends of Main Street. Old habits. The street looked perfectly normal. A delivery truck. A woman walking her dog. 2 teenagers riding bicycles. Peaceful. But Luke had spent too many years as a detective to trust peaceful appearances. Somewhere, someone had found him. And now they knew something even more dangerous. He had finally found people worth protecting. Luke barely closed the door to his office before Deputy Sarah Miller followed him inside. She carried a thin manila folder. You recognized him. It wasn't a question. Luke loosened his collar and looked out the window toward Carter's bakery. I did. Sarah placed the folder on his desk. Michael Grant. Luke didn't look at it. I know. It was a detective. He used to be. Sarah frowned. I checked before I came in. I left the department 3 years ago. Luke finally turned around. And now he owns a security consulting company. Sarah nodded slowly. That's what his records say. But nothing about his visit makes sense. Luke looked back out the window. No, it doesn't. Sarah folded her arms. You think he's here because of Chicago? I don't think. I know. The room fell silent. After nearly a minute, Sarah spoke again. Should we call the state police? Luke slowly shook his head. Not yet. What if I'm wrong, he looked at her. I drag innocent people into something that doesn't belong here. And if you're right? Luke's jaw tightened. Then I need proof. Across the street, Emily was frosting cupcakes while Lily carefully sprinkled colored sugar on top. Not so much. Emily laughed. They're cupcakes, not snowmen. Lily tilted her head. I like lots of sprinkles. I know you do. The bakery bell rang. Principal Nancy Collins stepped inside carrying a clipboard. Emily! Good morning. I just wanted to remind you. Emily smiled. Family day. Nancy nodded. Lily's been talking about it all week. Emily laughed. I'm not surprised. Nancy looked around. Will her father be coming? The question caught Emily off guard. She kept smiling. I don't think so. Nancy's expression softened. That's all right. We've got grandparents, aunts, neighbors. She smiled warmly. Family means different things. Emily appreciated that. It does. Nancy glanced toward Lily. The little girl was humming happily while decorating cookies. She seems excited. Emily smiled. She always is. Nancy waved goodbye and left. Emily watched the door close. For just a moment, an old sadness settled over her. Ben hadn't missed every important event, but he'd missed enough. Enough that Lily had stopped asking whether he was coming. That hurt more than anything. Around lunchtime, the bakery quieted down. Emily stepped outside with a tray of fresh flower pots she'd bought at the farmer's market. As she arranged them beneath the windows, she noticed Luke crossing the street. He wasn't heading toward the bakery. He was walking past it. Then he stopped. You need a hand. Emily looked up. I've got it. Luke picked up the heaviest flower pot anyway. I know. But it's easier with 2 people. She smiled. I suppose I can't argue with that. Together they carried the last few pots into place. Emily stepped back. What do you think? Luke looked at the colorful display. I think people are going to smile before they even walk inside. You really notice things like that. I try to. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You notice more than most people. It's the job. No. She looked at him thoughtfully. I think it's just you. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt strangely comfortable. Not awkward, just quiet, peaceful. Then a familiar voice interrupted. I knew it. Both turned. Martha Green stood on the sidewalk holding 2 grocery bags. Her grin stretched from ear to ear. Knew what? Emily asked. I knew you'd eventually get him helping around here. Emily laughed. He carried 1 flower pot. That's how these things start. Martha. I'm just saying. Luke chuckled softly. I think I'm being recruited. You absolutely are, Martha replied. This town has a way of adopting people. Luke's smile faded just a little. I've noticed. There was something bittersweet in the way he said it. Emily caught it. Martha didn't. That afternoon, Lily wandered into the sheriff's office carrying a paper bag. This time, she stopped at the reception desk. Hi. Miss Sarah. Sarah looked up. Well, hello. I brought cookies. Sarah gasped dramatically. My favorite visitor. Lily giggled. Can Sheriff Luke have one too? I think that can be arranged. Luke stepped out of his office. I heard my name. Lily held out the bag. We made oatmeal raisin today. Luke accepted it. Thank you. She looked around his office. Her drawing still sat inside the frame on his desk, exactly where she'd seen it days earlier. You kept it. I told you I would. She smiled proudly. Then her eyes landed on another frame beside it. Unlike hers, it was turned face down. Who's in that picture? Luke's smile disappeared. He looked at the frame for a long moment. No one anymore. Sarah quietly looked down at her paperwork. The room suddenly felt much quieter. Lily didn't fully understand, but even she sensed something had changed. I'm sorry. Luke managed a small smile. You don't have to be. He reached into his desk drawer. I've got something for you. He handed her a shiny gold sheriff's badge, plastic, but convincing enough for a 6-year-old. It read Junior Dare Deputy. Lily's eyes grew enormous. For me. For bravery? I wasn't brave. You walked up to a stranger everyone else avoided. He smiled. Turns out you were right. She pinned the badge onto her little apron. I'm going to protect the bakery. I think Ravenwood will be much safer. Later that evening, Emily found Lily asleep on the couch, still wearing the plastic badge. She smiled and gently carried her upstairs. As she tucked the blanket around her daughter, the badge slipped onto the pillow. Emily picked it up. Her smile slowly faded. Luke had given Lily something she'd never had before. Not a toy. Not a gift. A feeling. The feeling that someone believed in her. Someone noticed her. Someone kept their promises. She quietly set the badge back beside Lily, then walked to the living room window, across the street. The light in Luke's office was still on. Again Emily sighed. One of these days, you're going to remember to go home. She didn't realize someone else was watching that same light. Less than a mile away, parked on a quiet hill overlooking Main Street, Michael Grant lowered a camera with a powerful telephoto lens. He zoomed in on Luke's office, then on the apartment above the bakery, then on Emily closing the curtains for the night. His phone vibrated. A single message appeared. Status. Michael typed only 4 words. He's building a family. The reply came almost immediately. Then destroy that first. Michael stared at the screen for several long seconds. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. He looked back toward the bakery. A little girl had taped a handmade paper star to the upstairs window. He quietly whispered to himself, "This is going to get ugly." Then he started the SUV and disappeared into the darkness. Friday arrived sooner than Emily expected. For Lily, it might as well have been Christmas morning. She was awake before her alarm. She had already picked out her favorite yellow dress, brushed her hair twice, and reminded Emily at least 6 times that it was family day at school. Mom? I know? You remembered. I promise I remembered. You didn't forget? Emily laughed as she buttered 2 slices of toast. I've only been reminded every 10 minutes since Monday. Lily grinned. I'm just making sure. Emily smiled back, but beneath that smile sat a familiar worry. Family Day. It was supposed to be fun. But every year she watched children waiting by classroom doors for parents who arrived late. Or never arrived at all. She silently hoped today wouldn't leave another scar on her daughter. The bakery opened as usual, but Emily planned to close for an hour around lunchtime. A handwritten sign sat near the register. Closed from 11:30 a.m. to 1:00 p.m. for school family day. Most customers smiled when they saw it. Old George adjusted his glasses. Wouldn't miss that for the world if I were her. Mrs. Ellis nodded. They grow up too fast. Emily smiled. They really do. Just before 11, her phone buzzed. The screen showed a name she hadn't seen in almost 3 weeks. Ben Carter. Her stomach tightened. She answered. Hello. Ben sounded unusually cheerful. Hey, Em. She hadn't been, in years. What do you need? I heard it's family day. Emily closed her eyes for a second. It is. I thought maybe I'd stop by. You thought? Yeah. I'm only about an hour away. Emily leaned against the counter. Lily would love to see you. I know. I've just been busy. She'd heard those words too many times. When will you be here? I should make it. Should.
Not will, should.
Emily had learned the difference. I'll let her know. Great. Ben hung up. No goodbye. Just like always. Emily stared at the phone for several seconds before slipping it back into her apron pocket. She wanted to believe him. For Lily's sake. She just couldn't. At 11:15, Emily locked the bakery doors. Lily practically skipped all the way to Ravenwood Elementary. Children ran across the playground carrying handmade decorations. Parents filled the hallways. Grandparents carried balloons. Teachers greeted families with bright smiles. Principal Nancy Collins met them at the entrance. Lily, there you are. Lily hugged her. I'm ready. Nancy smiled. I can tell. She looked around. Is your father coming today? Lily hesitated. He said maybe. Nancy's smile softened. Well. She gently squeezed Lily's shoulder. We're very happy your mom is here. Emily caught the brief flash of disappointment on Lily's face. It lasted only a second. But it was there. The classroom buzzed with excitement. Construction, paper hearts covered the walls. Every child's desk displayed family photographs and hand-drawn pictures. Mrs. Wilson, Lily's teacher, clapped her hands. Welcome, everyone. Today we're celebrating all the wonderful people who love and support our students. One by one, children proudly introduced their families. My dad's a firefighter. My grandma makes the best pies. My uncle teaches me fishing. Lily kept glancing toward the classroom door. Every time footsteps echoed in the hallway, her eyes lit up. Every time, someone else walked in. Emily quietly reached for her daughter's hand beneath the table. Lily squeezed it tightly. Halfway through the program, Mrs. Wilson smiled. And now each student is going to introduce the special people in their lives. One by one, children stood. Applause filled the room. Finally, Lily Carter. Lily stood with a bright smile. She looked toward the classroom door one more time. It stayed closed. Emily saw the hope leave her daughter's eyes. Just a little, still. Lily squared her shoulders. This is my mom. Emily stood beside her. My mom owns Carter's Bakery. She works really hard. She makes the best cinnamon rolls in the whole world. The room laughed warmly, and Lily paused. My daddy couldn't come today. The classroom grew quiet. Emily's heart broke. She wanted to step in, to rescue her daughter from the moment. Before she could, someone knocked gently on the open classroom door. Every head turned. Luke Dawson stood in the hallway, still wearing his sheriff's uniform. He looked slightly out of breath, almost as if he'd hurried. I'm sorry to interrupt. Principal Nancy walked over. Everything all right, Sheriff? Luke nodded. I hope so. He glanced toward Lily. I heard family day was today. Emily looked at him in surprise. Luke continued quietly. I had to finish responding to an accident outside town. But he looked at Lily. I promised someone I'd try to keep my promises. Lily's face transformed instantly. Sheriff Luke. Mrs. Wilson smiled warmly. Would you like to join them? Luke hesitated. He looked at Emily first, not the teacher, not the principal. Emily understood why. This wasn't his decision alone. She smiled. I think she'd like that. Luke walked into the classroom. He stood beside Emily and Lily. Not too close. Careful, respectful. Mrs. Wilson smiled. And who is this? Before Luke could answer, Lily proudly announced, This is Sheriff Luke. Has my friend. And he's the nicest sheriff ever. Laughter rippled through the room. Luke smiled. I don't know if I've earned that title. You did? Lily replied confidently. Mrs. Wilson looked at Luke. What would you like everyone to know about Lily? Luke didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at the little girl beside him. Then back at the classroom. I've met a lot of people, in a lot of cities. But I don't think I've ever met someone who makes strangers feel welcome faster than Lily. He smiled at her. She reminds people. That kindness doesn't have to be complicated. Emily felt tears gathering before she realized it. Around the room, several parents quietly wiped at their own eyes. Lily wrapped both arms around Luke's waist. I knew you'd come. Luke gently rested a hand on her shoulder. I said I'd try. An hour later, the program ended. Families drifted toward the parking lot. Children laughed while showing off artwork. Emily, Lily, and Luke walked together toward the school entrance. Thank you, Emily said softly. You didn't have to come. Luke looked at Lily, who was happily talking to one of her classmates. Maybe. But I wanted to. Emily smiled. You made her day. Luke looked away for a moment. I know what it feels like to think someone isn't coming. Emily looked at him. There was history behind those words. Pain. Loss, regret. Before she could ask, Luke's radio crackled sharply. Dispatch to Sheriff Dawson. His expression changed instantly. He lifted the radio. Dawson, we've got a report of a vehicle matching yesterday's Bulow parked outside the Old Miller Motel. The warmth disappeared from his face. I'm on my way. He looked at Emily. Then at Lily. I have to go. Lily nodded. I know. Bad guys don't wait. Luke smiled. They usually don't. He hurried toward his patrol truck. Emily watched him leave. Something about the call unsettled her. She couldn't explain why. She only knew that the peaceful little world she'd been rebuilding suddenly didn't feel quite as safe. If you're enjoying Emily, Lily, and Luke's journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing heartfelt stories filled with mystery, hope, and second chances. Now, let's find out who has been hiding at the Old Miller Motel and why they seem determined to find Sheriff Luke Dawson. Luke reached the Old Miller Motel in less than 4 minutes. The abandoned building sat just outside Ravenwood, hidden behind a row of overgrown pine trees. It had been closed for almost 8 years. Half the windows were boarded up. The faded neon sign no longer lit up at night. Deputy Sarah was already waiting outside. She walked over as Luke stepped out of his patrol truck. I kept everyone back. Luke nodded. Anyone inside? I don't know. But somebody's been here. She pointed toward the gravel parking lot. Fresh tire tracks. Much newer than the others. Luke crouched beside them. SUV tires. Recently parked. Recently gone. He stood again. Stay outside. Sarah frowned. You sure? If somebody's still in there, I'd rather they focus on me. Sarah didn't argue. She simply nodded. Luke drew his flashlight. The motel door creaked as he pushed it open. Dust floated through the stale air. Every room along the hallway stood open. Except one. Room 12. The door wasn't completely closed. Just slightly open. Luke slowly approached. Every instinct he developed over nearly 20 years as a detective returned. Quiet footsteps. Slow breathing. Eyes scanning every corner. He gently pushed the door open. The room was empty. But someone had left only minutes earlier. A coffee cup still felt warm. The bed hadn't been made. A laptop charger remained plugged into the wall. On the small table sat a disposable camera. Luke carefully picked it up. Empty. The film had already been removed. His eyes moved toward the trash can. Receipts. Fast food wrappers. A newspaper from Chicago dated 3 days earlier. Nothing else. Then, he noticed something taped beneath the television. A single white envelope. His name was written across the front. Luke Dawson, nothing else. No address. No stamp. He slowly opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Emily and Lily. Walking home from the bakery. Someone had taken it from across the street. Luke's pulse slowed. Not from calm. From training. Beneath the photograph, one handwritten sentence. Nice little family you've found. For the first time in years, Luke felt genuine fear. Not for himself. For them. Outside, Sarah immediately knew something was wrong. Luke walked out holding the photograph. His face had gone pale. What happened? He handed her the picture. Sarah stared at it. Oh. She looked back toward the motel. This wasn't random. No. They know about Emily. Luke nodded once. And Lily. Sarah lowered her voice. We need to tell them. Luke looked toward Ravenwood in the distance. His jaw tightened. If I tell them now, they'll panic. And if you don't, they won't know they're in danger. Neither answer felt right. Back in town, Emily unlocked the bakery after family day. Business picked up almost immediately. Customers wanted to hear all about the school celebration. Mrs. Ellis smiled. I heard the sheriff came. Emily laughed. News really does travel fast. This is Ravenwood. It usually beats the newspaper. Old George grinned. I heard little Lily introduced him to the whole school. Emily covered her face. That sounds like her. Lily proudly looked up from the cookie display. I told everybody he's nice. You certainly did. I also told them he likes cinnamon rolls. Emily smiled. I'm sure he appreciated that. The afternoon felt normal again. Comfortable, safe. Emily wished she could keep it that way. Around 3 o'clock, the bakery bell chimed. Tom Reynolds stepped inside. He looked unusually serious. You got a minute? Emily immediately noticed the expression on his face. Of course. Tom glanced toward Lily, maybe privately. Emily asked Ava to watch the front counter. She followed Tom into the kitchen. What's wrong? Tom hesitated. I probably shouldn't be saying this. Then why are you? Because you deserve to know. Emily's stomach tightened.
Know what?
I was at the sheriff's office. This afternoon. Luke wasn't there. But Sarah was. Emily waited. Tom lowered his voice. I've known law enforcement for 30 years. I've seen the look on officers' faces when something serious happens. And I saw it today. Emily frowned. What happened? I don't know. But whatever it is, he looked directly at her. It's connected to Chicago. Emily felt a chill run through her. The man in the gray SUV. Tom nodded. I think so. Emily leaned against the counter. Do you think Luke's in danger? Tom answered without hesitation. Yes. As she swallowed. What about us? Tom looked away. I honestly don't know. Across town, Luke sat alone in his office. The photograph lay on his desk, beside Lily's framed drawing. The contrast was almost unbearable. One picture showed innocence. The other, a threat. Sarah entered quietly carrying 2 cups of coffee. You haven't moved. Nope. She placed the coffee beside him. You can't keep blaming yourself. Luke looked up. I'm the reason they're being watched. You don't know that. I do. He tapped the photograph. They followed me. They found them. Sarah sat down across from him. Then tell Emily. Luke stared out the window toward the bakery. Children laughed outside. Customers came and went. Lily waved at someone passing by. She had no idea. No idea someone had already turned her smile into leverage. I've spent 5 years trying to keep innocent people away from my problems, he said quietly. And somehow, they're the first people I've let close. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Just before closing time, Luke finally crossed the street. Emily looked up as the bakery bell rang. She smiled automatically. Then she saw his face. Her smile disappeared. Luke. He looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. She walked around the counter. What's wrong? He glanced toward Lily, who was happily reading a picture book in the corner. Can we talk? Emily nodded immediately. Ava quietly took over the register. Emily led Luke into the kitchen. The moment the door closed on him, she looked at him. What happened? Luke reached into his jacket, slowly removed the photograph. He handed it to her. Emily looked down. It took only a second to recognize herself. Lily. Walking home. Holding hands. She frowned. When was this taken? I don't know. She turned the picture over. The handwritten message stared back at her. Nice little family you've found. Emily felt every bit of color drain from her face. What? Her voice barely came out. What does this mean? Luke looked at the floor for a long moment before meeting her eyes. It means. He took a slow breath. My past has finally caught up with me. Emily looked back toward the dining room. Toward Lily. Then back at Luke. Is my daughter in danger? Luke didn't lie. He couldn't. I don't know. It was the most frightening answer she could have heard. Because if Luke Dawson, the calm, careful sheriff who always seemed to have a plan, didn't know, then whatever was coming was far worse than Emily had ever imagined. Emily stared at the photograph, then at Luke, then back at the photograph again. For several long seconds, she couldn't find her voice. Finally, she whispered, "Start from the beginning." Luke nodded once. You deserve that. He glanced toward the kitchen door. On the other side, he could hear the familiar sounds of the bakery. Coffee cups. Lauder. The bell above the entrance. For the first time since arriving in Ravenwood, those sounds didn't make him feel safe. They made him feel responsible. Emily folded her arms tightly across her chest. I'm listening. Luke took a slow breath. I didn't come to Ravenwood because I wanted a quieter job. I came because I ran out of places to hide. 5 years earlier, Chicago. Luke had been one of the city's youngest homicide detectives to earn a commendation for solving a string of high-profile murder cases. His name had appeared in newspapers. He'd been interviewed on television. People called him one of the best detectives in the department. I hated the attention. Emily listened without interrupting. It made people think I was important. I wasn't. I was just doing my job. He paused. Then everything changed. Luke walked to the small kitchen window. Rain clouds were gathering outside. There was a trafficking investigation. The biggest I'd ever worked. Children. Runaways. Kids nobody seemed to notice until they disappeared. Emily felt her stomach knot. Luke continued quietly. It took almost a year. We built the case. We identified the network. We planned simultaneous arrests. He stopped talking. His jaw tightened. The night before the operation, someone leaked everything. Emily already knew the answer. It fell apart. Luke nodded. They disappeared. So did the people we were trying to rescue. He swallowed. 3 officers were killed. Emily covered her mouth. Oh, Luke, I survived. His voice sounded almost bitter. Sometimes I still don't know why. Emily walked a little closer. What happened after that? Luke gave a tired laugh that contained no humor. The department needed someone to blame. You. I was leading the investigation. It was easier. But you didn't leak it. No. They knew I didn't. Emily frowned. Then why? Luke looked directly at her. Politics. The people behind that organization had money. Connections. The city wanted the story to disappear. So, They let everyone believe I was responsible. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. They destroyed your career. Luke nodded. I resigned. You could have fought it. I tried. For almost a year, what happened? No one wanted the truth. The kitchen grew quiet. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Emily finally understood something she'd wondered since the day they'd met. The sadness in Luke's eyes. It hadn't come from losing a job. It had come from carrying guilt that didn't belong to him. What about the people really responsible? Luke's expression darkened. They're still out there. And now, they know where I am. Emily looked down at the photograph again. My daughter. Luke interrupted gently. I don't think Lily is their target. She looked up sharply. What? I think I am. Then why photograph us? Because, Luke's voice softened. They know exactly how to hurt me. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. You've only known us a couple of weeks. Luke smiled sadly. I know. That doesn't seem to matter. A knock interrupted them. Deputy Sarah opened the kitchen door. I'm sorry. I know you're talking. Luke immediately recognized her expression. What is it? She looked toward Emily apologetically. We found the gray SUV. Luke's eyes narrowed. We're abandoned. Outside county limits. Emily frowned. They just left it. Sarah nodded. It was stolen. No fingerprints. No cameras nearby. Luke closed his eyes briefly. They wanted us to find it. Exactly. Sarah hesitated. There was something inside. Luke looked at her. What? Sarah handed him a small evidence bag. Inside was a single black chess piece. A king. Emily looked confused. What does that mean? Luke didn't answer. He simply stared at it. Sarah quietly spoke instead. It was something detectives used to leave. Emily looked between them. You've seen this before. Luke nodded once. Chicago. That was his signature. Emily's voice barely came out. Whose? Luke answered without looking away from the evidence bag. The man I never caught. Across town. Lily sat happily at one of the bakery tables drawing another picture. She looked up as Ava placed a chocolate chip cookie beside her. Thank you. What are you drawing today? Lily smiled proudly. Our family picnic. Ava looked at the picture. Emily. Lily. Sheriff Luke. A basket full of food. The bakery. A lake. It looks fun. It will be. You already planned it. No. But we will. Ava smiled. I hope so. Neither of them noticed the man standing across Main Street. He wore a baseball cap, dark sunglasses, a delivery company jacket. Perfectly ordinary. He looked toward the bakery window, saw Lily laughing, then quietly walked away. Back in the kitchen, Emily poured Luke another cup of coffee. Neither of them had touched the first one. So what happens now? Luke answered honestly. I increase patrols. I notify the state police. I reopen every contact I still have in Chicago. Emily nodded slowly. And me. You keep living your life. She almost laughed. You really think that's possible now? Luke looked at her. No, I don't. I'm sorry. Emily reached across the table. Without thinking, she gently placed her hand over his. Luke froze. Not because he didn't want the comfort, because it had been so long since anyone had offered it. She spoke softly. You've been carrying this alone for 5 years. He looked down at their hands. I thought that was safer. For everyone. Emily shook her head. It wasn't. Luke looked at her. For the first time since arriving in Ravenwood, he realized something. He wasn't standing in that kitchen because he was the sheriff. He wasn't there because Emily felt obligated to help him that was there. Because somewhere along the way, she had started caring about him. The realization should have made him happy. Instead, it terrified him. Because the more he cared about Emily and Lily, the more dangerous they became that evening. After closing the bakery, Emily tucked Lily into bed. Mom? Yes. Is Sheriff Luke okay? Emily hesitated. Why do you ask? He looked sad again today. Emily smiled gently. He had a hard day. Lily hugged her stuffed rabbit. Can we pray for him? Emily felt her throat tighten. I think he'd like that. Lily closed her eyes. Dear God, please help Sheriff Luke. And please remind him all that he doesn't have to be lonely anymore. Emily quietly wiped away a tear. Across the street, Luke sat alone in his office. He looked at the framed drawing Lily had given him. 3 smiling people standing outside a bakery. For the first time in years, he wanted something more than justice. He wanted a future. A home, a family. And deep down, he already knew. The people hunting him would do everything they could to make sure he never had one. Luke hadn't slept, again. At 4:30 in the morning, he gave up trying. He poured himself another cup of coffee in the sheriff's office, opened the blinds, and watched the lights come on across Main Street. Right on schedule. The bakery. Emily was already there. Even from a distance, he recognized the routine. She unlocked the front door, turned on the lights, pulled the curtains open. A few minutes later, Lily appeared beside her wearing an apron that was much too big. Luke smiled. Some routines deserved protecting. He just wasn't sure he could. Across the street, Emily caught herself looking toward the sheriff's office. The light was already on. He's there, she whispered. What? Lily asked. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Knowing what she'd learned yesterday changed everything. Every late night, every tired smile, every moment Luke stared a little too long out the window. Now she understood. He hadn't been watching the town. He'd been making sure it stayed safe. By 8 o'clock, the bakery was full. Life in Ravenwood refused to slow down simply because danger had arrived. Old George argued over baseball scores. Mrs. Ellis complained that grocery store bread should be illegal. Construction workers laughed over coffee. For a little while, everything felt normal. Then the front door opened. Emily looked up. Her smile disappeared. Ben. Ben. Carter walked inside wearing pressed khakis and an expensive polo shirt. He looked exactly as he always had. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect first impression. He spread his arms. Morning, Em. Emily didn't return the smile. Lily's in the kitchen. Ben frowned slightly. Not even a hello. You missed family day. Traffic. Emily folded her arms. You told me you were an hour away. I was. So what happened? Ben shrugged. A meeting ran long. Emily stared at him. Our daughter waited for you. I know. I'm sorry. His apology sounded practiced, like something he'd said before. Because he had, many times. Lily stepped out from the kitchen carrying a tray of cookies. She froze. Dad. Ben smiled, warmly. Hey, Peanut. For just a second, hope lit up Lily's face. She ran over and hugged him. I thought you were coming yesterday. Ben hugged her back. I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to. Emily watched quietly. She wanted Lily to have this moment, even if it was built on another excuse. Ben looked around the bakery. Looks busy. It usually is. He turned back to Lily. How about I take you for ice cream later? Lily looked immediately toward Emily. The silent question every divorced parent recognized. Emily nodded. If your dad keeps his promise. Ben laughed awkwardly. I will. The bakery bell rang again. Luke stepped inside. He stopped the moment he saw Ben. Emily saw it happen. 2 men. Both instantly understanding who the other was. Ben offered his hand. You must be the sheriff. Luke shook it once. Luke Dawson. Ben Carter. Lily smiled brightly. My dad? Luke smiled politely. It's nice to meet you. And Ben studied him for a second longer than necessary. I've heard a lot about you. Luke glanced at Lily. I hope most of it was good. Ben smiled. It was interesting. Emily recognized that tone. Ben wasn't being friendly. He was measuring someone. Looking for weaknesses. He'd always done that. Ben turned toward Emily. Can we talk? Emily nodded toward a small table in the corner. I've got 5 minutes. Luke quietly stepped aside and ordered coffee. He made no effort to overhear. Emily appreciated that. Ben leaned forward. I've been thinking. Emily immediately disliked those words. About Lily. Emily waited. I think she needs more stability. Her expression hardened. What are you saying? I've been offered a promotion. Congratulations. It's in Cedar Falls. Emily frowned. That's almost 2 hours away. I know. I think Lily should come with me. Emily stared at him. What? It'd be a better school district. I'll have more money. I can provide more opportunities. Emily's voice dropped. You barely make your visitation weekends. Ben sighed. That's unfair. No. It's accurate. I've been busy. You've been absent. Across the bakery, Luke noticed Emily's expression change. Her shoulders stiffened. Her jaw tightened. Something wasn't right. He looked away again. It wasn't his conversation. Not yet. Ben reached into his briefcase. I wasn't going to do this today. Emily's stomach tightened. But my lawyer says I should. He placed a large envelope on the table. Emily looked down. The words across the top made her blood run cold. Petition to modify custody. She slowly looked back up. You're taking me to court. I'd rather settle. You missed family day yesterday. And today you're asking to take my daughter. Ben rubbed his forehead. Emily? No. You don't get to do this. I've changed. When? This morning. The bakery had grown unusually quiet. Not because people could hear every word. Because they could see enough. Everyone knew something serious was happening. Lily looked between her parents. Mom? Emily forced herself to smile. It's okay, sweetheart. It wasn't. Not even close. Ben stood, read the paperwork. We'll talk. He picked up his coffee, then noticed Luke standing near the counter. Ben smiled politely. I suppose we'll be seeing each other around town. Luke nodded. I imagine so. Ben walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he looked back at Emily. You deserve someone dependable. I just don't think that's you anymore. The door closed behind him. Silence settled over the bakery. Emily stood frozen, the custody papers still resting on the table. Her hands trembled. She hadn't even opened them yet. Lily walked over quietly. Mom? Emily quickly wiped her eyes. I'm okay? Lily hugged her waist. No, you're not. Emily held her daughter tightly. More tightly than she ever had before. A few moments later, Luke walked over. Not too close. Just close enough. You don't have to tell me what happened. Emily gave a tired smile. He wants custody. Luke's expression darkened. I see. He says Lily would have a better life with him. Luke looked toward Lily, who was helping Ava straighten napkins, blissfully unaware of the legal words that could change her life. Then he looked back at Emily. I've only known you a short time. Emily nodded. But I've watched you every morning. I've watched how you treat people. I've watched how Lily looks at you. He smiled gently. Children don't fake that. Emily felt tears fill her eyes again. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Luke hesitated. Then quietly said, You fight. She looked at him. You fight for the little girl who believes the world is good. You fight because she deserves someone who keeps showing up. Emily knew he wasn't just talking about custody. He was talking about promises, about family day, about fathers, about himself. For the first time since Ben had walked into the bakery, she felt something other than fear. Determination. Across town, Michael Grant sat inside a rented cabin overlooking the river. A folder lay open on the table inside. Photographs. Luke, Emily, Lily, and now, Ben Carter. Michael smiled faintly. He picked up his phone. This just became easier. A voice answered. What changed? Michael looked at the newest photograph of Ben leaving the bakery. They're already fighting each other. The voice on the other end chuckled. Good. People make mistakes when they're hurting. Michael closed the folder. They won't even notice me. Emily didn't open the custody papers until after closing. She couldn't. Every time she reached for the envelope, Lily walked into the room. Every time she thought about reading it, Another customer needed help. Maybe. A small part of her hoped that if she didn't open it, it wouldn't be real. It didn't work. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep upstairs with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked beneath one arm, Emily carried the envelope to the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet. Only the ticking of the old wall clock kept her company. She slowly opened the envelope. Page after page. Legal language. Court dates. Financial statements. Then, a sentence that made her stomach drop. Petitioner believes the respondent's relationship with Sheriff Luke Dawson demonstrates poor judgment and exposes the minor child to unnecessary risk. Emily read it again and again. Her chest tightened. Ben wasn't just asking for custody. He was using Luke against her. A sharp knock echoed downstairs. Emily quickly folded the papers. She looked at the clock. Nearly 9. Who would be visiting now? Downstairs, Luke stood outside the bakery. He hadn't planned on coming. In fact, he'd driven past twice before finally parking. The lights upstairs were still on. He almost turned around. Then the bakery door opened. Emily looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. I hope I'm not interrupting. She managed a small smile. No. You look like you haven't gone home. Luke gave a quiet laugh. I could say the same thing. Emily hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. The bakery looked different at night. Without customers, without conversation, it felt peaceful, almost sacred. Emily switched on only the lights above the front counter. The rest of the room stayed softly shadowed. I made coffee. Luke smiled. I should probably stop drinking it. No, I won't. She poured 2 cups. Neither of them spoke for a minute. Finally, Emily slid the custody papers across the counter. He mentioned you. Luke looked down. His eyes narrowed as he read the sentence. I'm sorry. Emily shook her head. You didn't write this? No. But if I hadn't come here, she interrupted him. Stop. Luke looked up. This isn't your fault. It feels like it. She folded her arms. My ex-husband looked for an excuse. If it wasn't you, it would have been something else. Luke remained quiet. Emily sighed. Ben always needed someone else to blame. For a while, they simply sat together. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It felt shared. Finally, Luke spoke. When I was 12, Emily looked at him. My father missed my baseball championship. She blinked. You played baseball. I wasn't very good. He smiled faintly. But I thought that day mattered. What happened? He promised he'd be there. Luke looked down into his coffee. He never came. Emily didn't interrupt. I waited until everyone else had gone home. My coach finally drove me back. He took a slow breath. Later I found out Dad had taken an extra shift. They needed the money. I understood. But he smiled sadly. Understanding doesn't stop a kid from waiting. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. You remembered. I remember every minute. He looked toward the stairs where Lily was sleeping. That's why family day mattered. I couldn't let her keep waiting. Emily reached across the counter without thinking. This time, Luke met her hand halfway. Their fingers rested together for only a moment. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The bell above the bakery door suddenly jingled. Both looked up. Tom Reynolds hurried inside. He was breathing hard. Luke. Luke immediately stood. What happened? Tom looked toward Emily. I hate bringing this here. What is it? Tom swallowed. The Henderson family just reported someone was asking questions. Luke's expression sharpened. Questions about what? You. Tom looked directly at Emily and the bakery. The room went completely still. What exactly did they ask? Luke said. Tom took off his cap. A man stopped by the farm this afternoon. Said he was writing a travel article. Emily frowned. A travel article. Tom nodded. He asked where the sheriff liked to eat. Asked if he had family. Luke already knew the answer. He was fishing. Tom nodded. The Hendersons got suspicious, so they called me. Luke looked toward the window. The street outside was empty. Too empty. Did they describe him? About 40. Dark hair. Expensive clothes. Emily immediately thought of the man from Chicago, Michael Grant. Luke nodded once. I think so. Luke turned back to Emily. Starting tomorrow, I want a patrol car outside the bakery during opening and closing. Emily immediately shook her head. Luke, I'm serious. I don't want the whole town thinking. I don't care what the town thinks. His voice was firmer than she'd ever heard. Then he caught himself. I'm sorry. Emily saw something she hadn't before. Not anger, fear. Real fear. She quietly nodded. Okay. If it helps, it will. Just then, Luke's phone vibrated. An unknown number. He almost ignored it, then answered. Dawson. Silence. For several seconds, nothing, in a familiar voice. Confident, almost amused. Hello, Luke. Every muscle in Luke's body tightened. He knew that voice. He hadn't heard it in 5 years. Who is this? A soft chuckle. You already know. Luke didn't answer. The voice continued. You've found yourself quite a peaceful little town. And another pause. A beautiful little family. Luke's face lost all color. If you touch them, you misunderstand. The man interrupted. I haven't touched anyone. Yet. Luke gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. What do you want? I want to finish something we started in Chicago. The line went quiet. Then one final sentence. I'll see you soon, Sheriff. The call disconnected. Luke slowly lowered the phone. Emily looked at him. Luke. He looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before. It wasn't Michael. Her heart sank. Then who? Luke took a slow, unsteady breath. The man behind everything. The one who destroyed my case. The one who got those officers killed. Emily whispered. The one you never caught? Luke nodded. He's here. Outside. Half a mile away. A dark sedan sat on a hill overlooking the lights of Ravenwood. Inside, a man watched the bakery through binoculars. He smiled as he slipped the phone back into his pocket. It's been a long time, Detective. But this time, I'm choosing the battlefield. Luke didn't sleep. Not because he couldn't. Because there was too much to do. By 5 o'clock the next morning, every deputy in Ravenwood had been briefed. Patrol routes were changed. Extra units were assigned near the bakery, the elementary school, and Emily's apartment. Deputy Sarah stood over the map in the conference room. So we're treating this as credible. Luke looked at the photograph of Emily and Lily pinned to the board. Until proven otherwise. Tom Reynolds leaned against the wall. You finally believe he's here? Luke nodded. I do. Sarah folded her arms. Then let us call the FBI. Luke was quiet. They'll come. They'll take over. And they'll turn Ravenwood into a media circus. Sarah frowned. They'll also bring resources. I know. Luke looked toward the window. But before I involve them, I need one thing. What? Proof. Across the street, Emily unlocked the bakery. She wasn't alone. A marked patrol car already sat outside. Deputy Kevin Brooks stepped out and tipped his hat. Morning, Miss Carter. Emily smiled politely. Morning. You really didn't have to do this. Kevin glanced toward the sheriff's office. Those were my orders. Emily sighed. I suppose arguing won't help. No, ma'am. It usually doesn't. Lily peeked out from behind the counter. Do we have our own police car? Kevin smiled. For a little while. The little girl clapped excitedly. This is awesome. Emily laughed. Only Lily could think having police protection was exciting. The morning rush began. Despite everything, people still needed coffee. Life kept moving. Mrs. Ellis noticed the patrol car first. My goodness. What's going on? Emily forced a smile. Oh, probably just routine. Old George looked through the window. Must be something important. But Emily quickly changed the subject. Who's ready for fresh cinnamon rolls? Within seconds, The conversation shifted. She silently thanked the smell of fresh bread. Sometimes it solved problems words couldn't. At 9:30, Luke finally walked into the bakery. He looked cleaner than he had the night before. Fresh uniform, fresh shave. But Emily immediately noticed the same tired eyes. "You've been up all night." Luke smiled faintly. "I got a couple of hours." She raised one eyebrow. "I don't believe you." "You shouldn't." She poured his coffee before he asked. "You know, I liked you better when you weren't paying attention." Emily smiled. "I don't." Lily hurried over. "You have bodyguards now." Luke looked confused. "Bodyguards?" She pointed outside. "The police car?" He laughed softly. "I suppose we do." She whispered dramatically. "Does that mean bad guys are coming?" Luke crouched beside her. "It means we're making sure everyone stays safe." "We're already safe." "I'd like to keep it that way." She nodded. "Okay?" Then, just as naturally as always, she hugged him. Luke hesitated only a heartbeat before gently hugging her back. Emily watched quietly. There was nothing forced about it anymore. It had become natural, comfortable, like they'd known each other far longer than a few weeks. The bakery door opened again. A delivery driver stepped inside carrying a medium-sized cardboard box. Package for Carter's bakery. Emily frowned. "I wasn't expecting anything." The driver checked his scanner. Signature required. Emily signed. The driver left. Luke watched him through the window until the van disappeared. "What did you order?" "I didn't." Emily looked at the shipping label. No return address. Only one line. For Emily Carter, Luke's expression changed instantly. "Don't open it." Emily looked up. "What?" Luke carefully pulled on a pair of latex gloves from his pocket. "You carry gloves." "I'm a sheriff." "Fair point." He gently turned the box over. No ticking. No strange odor. Nothing leaking. Sarah, who had just walked in behind him, immediately recognized his posture. "What have we got?" "A known package." She quietly moved customers toward the far side of the bakery without causing panic. Luke slowly cut the tape, lifted the lid. Inside, nothing dangerous, just a small white bakery box. Emily frowned. "That's..." Luke opened it. A single cinnamon roll sat inside, fresh, perfectly baked. Placed on top was a folded note. Luke picked it up. "Read it?" His face went completely still. Emily reached for it. "What does it say?" He hesitated, then handed it to her. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. "I hear these are your favorite. Enjoy breakfast while you still can." Emily's hands began to shake. "This isn't funny." "No." Luke's voice was calm. "It isn't." Sarah looked inside the larger box. "There has to be something else." There was. Taped beneath the bakery box, a tiny GPS tracker. Sarah carefully removed it. "They wanted us to find this." Luke nodded. "They wanted us to know they can get close." Within minutes, the bakery was temporarily closed. Deputies searched the building. The package was sent for forensic testing. Customers were politely turned away. Lily sat quietly in the kitchen. For the first time since all of this had begun, she looked frightened. She tugged gently on Emily's sleeve. "Mom." "Yes, sweetheart." "Did I do something wrong?" Emily immediately knelt beside her. "Oh, honey. Why would you think that?" "Because everybody looks scared." Emily wrapped her arms around her daughter. "This has nothing to do with you." "Then why are they here?" Emily searched for the right words. Before she could answer, Luke walked into the kitchen. He removed his hat and knelt beside Lily. "Can I tell you something?" She nodded. "When I was your age, I thought brave people were never scared. Were they?" Luke smiled. "Numb. The bravest people I've ever met were scared. They just kept doing the right thing anyway." Lily looked up at him. "So you're scared?" Luke answered honestly. "Yes, but I'm also determined." "What's determined?" "It means..." He smiled gently. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt the people I care about." Lily thought about that, then quietly slipped her little hand into his. I'll be brave too. Emily had to look away for a second. Otherwise, she knew she'd cry. That afternoon, the forensic lab called. Sarah answered. She listened for less than a minute before hanging up. Luke looked at her. What? No fingerprints. I figured, but... She held up the GPS tracker. It was purchased in Chicago. Luke wasn't surprised. What about the cinnamon roll? Sarah gave him a puzzled look. It came from a bakery. Luke frowned. Which one? Sarah slowly read from her notes. A bakery. Less than 3 blocks from your old precinct. Luke closed his eyes. He knew exactly which bakery it was. He'd eaten there hundreds of times during late-night investigations. The message wasn't about breakfast. It was personal. Deliberately personal. Someone wanted him to remember Chicago. Someone wanted him off balance. And judging by the growing knot in his stomach, it was working. Late that evening, a black SUV rolled quietly into Ravenwood. It didn't stop near the bakery. It didn't stop near the sheriff's office. Instead, it parked outside the small cemetery on the edge of town. A man stepped down. Well-dressed, gray at the temples. Calm. He carried no weapon. Only a bouquet of white lilies. He walked slowly through the rows of headstones until he reached one simple grave. He placed the flowers gently on the grass. Then smiled. So, this is where you decided to start over. He looked toward the distant lights of Main Street. I have to admit, Luke, you picked a beautiful town. The man turned and walked back to his SUV. As he drove away, a single name remained carved into the fresh flowers ribbon. For Detective Daniel Harper, one of the officers who had died the night Luke's Chicago case fell apart. The man who had just left the flowers wasn't honoring the dead. He was sending Luke a message. I remember everything. Luke stood alone in Ravenwood Cemetery just after sunrise. The white lilies were still there, fresh, not a single petal out of place. Deputy Sarah walked carefully across the damp grass carrying an evidence bag. You were right. Luke didn't answer. He kept looking at the ribbon. For Detective Daniel Harper, 5 years. 5 years since he'd seen Daniel's name. 5 years since he'd stood beside Daniel's widow at the funeral, unable to explain why her husband never came home. Sarah quietly broke the silence. You knew him well? Luke swallowed. He was my partner. You've never talked about him. I've tried not to. Sarah nodded. I figured. Luke knelt beside the flowers. Daniel Harper had been 39 years old. Married. 2 children. The kind of detective who carried snacks in his desk because someone in the office was always working through lunch. The kind of man who remembered birthdays. Who never left a witness feeling ignored. Who believed every child deserved someone willing to fight for them. Luke smiled sadly. He would have loved this town. Sarah looked at him. He also would have told you this isn't your fault. Didn't answer. Because Daniel had told him exactly that, the last time they'd ever spoken. Emily opened the bakery to find the patrol car already waiting outside. Deputy Kevin waved. Morning. She smiled politely. Morning. She unlocked the front door. The familiar smell of fresh bread filled the room. Normally it settled her nerves. Today, not so much. She couldn't stop thinking about the package. Or the note. Or Luke's face when he'd read it. Lily came downstairs a few minutes later. She looked quieter than usual. Not frightened. Just thoughtful. Emily knelt beside her. You okay? Lily nodded. I had a dream. What about? The bad man. Emily felt her heart tighten. What bad man? The one Sheriff Luke's looking for. Emily brushed a curl away from her daughter's face. It was only a dream. Lily looked toward the sheriff's office across the street. I know. But dreams can still feel real. Emily hugged her tightly. They can. Around 9 o'clock, Luke walked into the bakery. He wasn't in uniform. He wore jeans, a dark flannel shirt, and a light jacket. Emily looked surprised. No badge today. It's my day off. You have those? So I've been told. Lily immediately noticed. You look different. Luke smiled. I hope that's okay. I like it. She tilted her head. You look less sheriffy. Emily laughed. I think that's the official term. Luke chuckled. I'll remember that. He walked to the counter. I actually came for something. Emily waited. I was wondering. He looked at Lily. If the two of you would like to come with me. Emily blinked. Come where? The lake. Lily's eyes became enormous. The lake. Luke nodded. I heard there's a picnic area. And? He looked back at Emily. I figured all three of us could use a few hours where nobody talks about custody hearings or Chicago. Emily hesitated. The invitation caught her completely off guard. Lily gently tugged on her sleeve. Please. Emily looked at Luke. As this? She smiled softly. Official sheriff business. New. This is just... He searched for the right words. Someone trying to have one normal afternoon. Emily thought about it. Then nodded. I think we'd like that. Lily squealed. We're having a picnic. By early afternoon, the bakery was closed. A handwritten sign in the window read back, at 400 p.m. The drive to Willow Lake took less than 15 minutes. Tall oak trees surrounded the water. A gentle breeze rippled across its surface. Families fished from the wooden dock. Children skipped stones. It was peaceful. Almost impossibly peaceful. Luke spread a blanket beneath a large maple tree. Emily unpacked sandwiches, fruit, and lemonade. Lily immediately ran toward the shoreline collecting smooth rocks. Don't go too far, Emily called. I won't. Luke watched her for a moment. She's happy. Emily smiled. She doesn't ask for much. Luke nodded. That's what worries me. Emily looked at him. What do you mean? Children who don't ask for much usually learned early not to expect much. Emily felt those words settle deep inside her. She looked toward Lily. He was right. Somewhere along the way, her daughter had stopped expecting people to show up, stopped expecting promises to be kept, and accepted disappointment far too easily for a 6-year-old. Lily came running back, carrying 3 perfectly smooth stones. Look, they're heart-shaped. Emily laughed. I think one of those is just round. No. She held it up proudly. If you turn it sideways, Luke leaned closer. I see it. Emily smiled. You're encouraging her. I am. Lily handed one stone to Luke. That's yours. He looked at it. Thank you. Now you'll always remember today. Luke closed his hand around the stone. I don't think I could forget today. For the first time in weeks, Emily saw him relax. Really relax. He skipped a stone across the lake, laughed when Lily insisted hers had gone farther. Even admitted she'd probably won. Watching them together, Emily caught herself imagining something she hadn't allowed herself to imagine since her divorce. A future, not a dramatic one. Just Saturday picnics, school concerts, quiet dinners, someone to help carry groceries upstairs, someone who showed up. The thought scared her, almost as much as it comforted her. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower, Luke stood near the dock watching Lily feed ducks. Emily walked over beside him. Thank you. He looked at her. For what? For today. I think we both needed it. Luke nodded slowly. I know I did. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Emily quietly asked, Do you ever think you'll stop looking over your shoulder? Luke didn't answer immediately. I hope so. But hope and reality aren't always friends. Emily looked out across the lake. I've spent 2 years teaching myself not to depend on anyone. Luke turned toward her. And how's that working? She smiled sadly. I was doing fine, until a sheriff who drinks too much coffee moved across the street. Luke laughed. I've been accused of worse. Emily laughed too. For just a moment, the weight they'd both been carrying seemed lighter. Neither of them noticed the drone. It hovered nearly 200 feet above the lake, small enough to blend into the afternoon sky. Its camera silently captured everything. Luke laughing, Emily smiling. Lily chasing ducks. A perfect little afternoon. Inside a rented cabin 15 miles away, Michael Grant removed the memory card from the drone. He watched a few seconds of footage, then sent a short encrypted video to someone waiting in Chicago. A reply appeared almost instantly. He's finally happy. Michael stared at the screen, then looked back at the frozen image of Luke smiling beside Emily. He slowly shook his head. That's exactly what worries me. As Luke, Emily, and Lily packed up the picnic, none of them realized the enemy no longer needed binoculars. He was watching them from the sky. Monday morning arrived with heavy gray clouds hanging over Ravenwood. Emily stood behind the bakery counter staring at a letter she didn't want to open. She already knew what it was. The return address belonged to the county courthouse. Lily looked up from arranging napkins. Mom. Emily forced a smile. Everything's okay. Lily tilted her head. No, it isn't. Children always knew, even when adults believed they were hiding it well. Emily walked around the counter and hugged her daughter. I just have some grown-up paperwork. Like taxes. Emily laughed. Something like that. I don't like grown-up paperwork. Emily smiled. Neither do I. She finally opened the envelope. Inside was exactly what she'd expected. Custody hearing 10 days from today. Emily quietly folded the notice and slipped it back into the envelope. Only 10 days. 10 days before a judge decided whether Ben's request deserved a hearing. 10 days before strangers started discussing her life. And Lily's. The bakery door opened. Luke walked in carrying 2 coffees. Emily looked surprised. I thought I was supposed to be serving you. I figured I'd return the favor. He handed her one of the cups. Emily smiled. I didn't know you knew my order. You like 1 sugar. Just a little cream. She blinked. You noticed. I pay attention. Emily looked down at the coffee. So do I. Luke studied her face for a moment. What's wrong? She handed him the letter. He read it quietly. When? 10 days. Luke nodded slowly. We'll get through it. Emily sighed. I don't even know where to start. You start by finding a good attorney. I already have one. And I can't really afford one. Luke looked at her. Emily, I'm not asking for help. I know. He paused. But if you ever do, she smiled softly. I know. Across the bakery, Lily was drawing again. This time, it wasn't the sheriff's office or the bakery. She'd drawn a courthouse. Emily walked over. What's this? Lily shrugged. You said we have to go to court. Emily knelt beside her. Who told you that? I heard you talking on the phone. Emily silently blamed herself. She'd forgotten how carefully children listened. Lily looked down at the picture. Am I in trouble? Emily's heart broke. She immediately wrapped her daughter in her arms. Oh, sweetheart. Numpo. Never? Then why are we going? Emily searched for words a 6-year-old could understand. Sometimes, grown-ups need another grown-up to help solve a disagreement. Like the principal. Emily smiled. Exactly like the principal. Lily seemed to think about that. Will the principal know I want to stay with you? Emily hugged her tighter. Yes. I think she'll know. Luke quietly looked away. He didn't want Emily to see the anger in his eyes. Late that afternoon, Ben returned. This time he wasn't alone. A woman in a Navy business suit walked beside him. She carried a leather briefcase. Ben smiled politely. Emily. Emily's shoulders immediately stiffened. What now? I wanted you to meet my attorney. The woman extended her hand. Rachel Simmons. Emily didn't take it. I already have a lawyer. Rachel calmly lowered her hand. I assumed as much. Ben looked around the bakery. I was hoping we could avoid court. Emily almost laughed. You filed the paperwork. I know. So don't pretend you're doing me a favor. Ben sighed. You know Cedar Falls has better schools. Emily folded her arms. And yet Lily has straight A's. You work long hours. So do you. I make more money. Emily looked directly into his eyes. You also missed family day. Ben's face tightened. That was one mistake. Emily shook her head. Nope. 8 was the latest mistake. The bakery had grown quiet. Customers weren't pretending not to listen anymore. Old George slowly folded his newspaper. Mrs. Ellis looked ready to throw Ben out herself. Ben noticed. He lowered his voice. I'm trying to do what's best. Emily answered just as quietly. No. You're trying to win. Luke stepped forward. Not aggressively. Just enough to make it clear Emily wasn't standing alone. Ben looked at him. This doesn't concern you. Luke nodded. You're right, it doesn't. He smiled politely. But this is a public business. And I'd appreciate it if everyone kept their voices down. Rachel gently touched Ben's arm. We should go. Ben looked at Emily one last time. You'll understand eventually. Emily answered without hesitation. I already do. Ben frowned. What does that mean? It means... She looked toward Lily, who was quietly helping Ava wipe tables. Parents don't become good parents because they hire good lawyers. Ben didn't respond. He simply turned and walked out. Rachel followed. Outside, the dark gray sedan disappeared around the corner. That evening, Luke closed the bakery with Emily. Neither of them said much. After the last chair was turned upside down on the tables, Emily finally broke the silence. Do you think judges can tell when someone's pretending? Luke smiled faintly. The good ones can. She looked toward the window. I'm scared. I know. I'm scared I'll lose. Luke shook his head. You won't lose because someone has a nicer suit. Emily laughed softly. I needed to hear that. He looked at her. You know what I saw today? What? A little girl who ran into the bakery after school, hugged her mother, then asked if she could help make cookies. Emily smiled. So, Luke met her eyes. That's home. You can't fake home. Emily felt tears gathering again. You're getting really good at saying exactly what I need to hear. Luke chuckled. I wish I were half as good at everything else. Across town, Michael Grant parked outside an old warehouse. He stepped inside. Another man waited in the shadows. Older, elegant, calm. The same unseen voice Luke had heard on the phone. Michael handed him a tablet. The screen showed footage from the lake, then photographs from outside the bakery, then Ben Carter leaving with his attorney. The older man watched without speaking. Finally, he smiled. So the ex-husband is creating problems. Michael nodded, without realizing it. Excellent. Michael hesitated. I still don't understand. The older man looked out the warehouse window. You don't have to. He closed the tablet. Pain is like a crack in glass. You don't create the crack. You simply know where to press. He smiled again, and Luke Dawson has never been easier to break. The far across town, Luke stood on the sidewalk outside Carter's bakery. Emily locked the front door. Lily waved from the upstairs window. Luke waved back. For one brief moment, everything looked peaceful. None of them realized. The next move had already been planned, and this time, it wouldn't be a warning. It would be personal. The rain started just before dawn, not a thunderstorm. Just a steady, quiet rain that painted the streets of Ravenwood silver. Emily unlocked the bakery a little earlier than usual. She wanted to finish a large catering order before the morning rush. Lily sat at the corner table wearing headphones, coloring quietly while Emily measured flour. Everything felt ordinary. Almost. Because every few minutes, Emily caught herself looking through the front window. The patrol car was still there. Deputy Kevin gave her a reassuring wave. She smiled back. Somehow, watch. It helped. Across the street, Luke finished reading the overnight reports. Nothing unusual. No suspicious vehicles. No calls from Chicago. No anonymous messages. He should have felt relieved. Instead, something bothered him. People like the man hunting him didn't simply disappear. They waited. And waiting made them dangerous. Sarah walked into his office carrying 2 coffees. You've read the reports 3 times. Luke looked up. I know. What are you looking for? The thing we're missing. Sarah sighed. I hate when you say that. So do I. By 10 o'clock, the bakery was packed. The smell of fresh cinnamon filled the room. Customers laughed. Children pointed at cupcakes. Old George insisted Emily had put too many raisins in his oatmeal cookie. I put the same amount in every week. You've changed the recipe. I haven't. You've become stingy. Emily laughed. I'm charging you extra for complaining. The bakery erupted in laughter. For a few precious minutes, the fear disappeared. Then Emily looked toward Lily's table. It was empty. She smiled to herself. Probably in the kitchen. Lily. A no answer. She looked behind the counter. Nothing. In the pantry. Silence. Emily's smile faded. She walked into the kitchen. Lily. A still nothing. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. She checked the storage room, the upstairs staircase, the restroom. Empty. Her heartbeat quickened. Ava. The teenage employee looked up. Yeah. Have you seen Lily? Ava frowned. I thought she was with you. Emily's pulse spiked. No, Po. I haven't seen her for... She stopped. She honestly couldn't remember. 5 minutes. 10. The bakery suddenly felt too loud. Too crowded. Emily hurried into the dining room. Lily? Customers looked up. Old George immediately stood. What's wrong? I can't find her. The room went silent. Across the street. Luke heard the shout before the radio ever sounded. He looked toward the bakery. Emily ran out the front door. Barefoot. Panic written across her face. Luke was already moving. He reached the bakery steps just as Emily grabbed his arm. I can't find her. His expression changed instantly. When did you last see her? I don't know. She was drawing. I turned around. And now she's gone. Luke lifted his radio. Dispatch. This is Dawson. We have a missing child. His voice stayed calm. Years of training. Inside his heart was racing. Within seconds, the town came alive. Deputies blocked nearby streets. Volunteers left their stores. Parents called children inside. Every officer in Ravenwood began searching. Luke looked directly at Emily. I need you to breathe. She shook her head frantically. I can't. You have to. So you can answer my questions. Emily closed her eyes, forced herself to inhale. Luke gently asked, what was she wearing? Yellow raincoat. Blue rain boots. She had... Emily's voice broke. She had her junior deputy badge. Luke nodded once. Sarah immediately repeated the description over the radio. 10 minutes. No sign. 20 minutes. Nothing. 30 minutes. Emily felt as though she couldn't breathe. Luke searched every alley, every playground, every nearby business. Nothing. His worst fears began clawing at the back of his mind. Then his radio crackled. Sheriff. Luke grabbed it instantly. Dawson, I think we found her. We're behind the library. Luke ran. Emily followed. When they reached the library, Lily sat beneath the covered gazebo. Perfectly safe, perfectly dry, feeding breadcrumbs to a family of ducks in the pond. She looked up and smiled. Emily dropped to her knees and wrapped both arms around her. Oh, sweetheart. Lily looked confused. What's wrong? Emily couldn't even answer. She simply held her tighter. Luke knelt beside them. Lily, can you tell me what happened? She pointed toward the ducks. They looked hungry. Emily blinked. You came here? I wanted to feed them. I thought you'd know where I was. Emily gently cupped her daughter's face. Honey, you have to tell me. I was only gone a little while. Luke checked his watch. 43 minutes. 43 minutes during which half the town believed a little girl had been taken. He smiled gently. You gave us quite a scare. I'm sorry. I forgot. Emily kissed her forehead. We're not angry. We were scared. Lily looked down. I didn't want you to be scared. The crowd slowly dispersed. Deputies reopened the streets. People returned to work. Everyone breathed again. Everyone, except Luke. Something still felt wrong. He walked through the gazebo one more time, studying the ground, the benches, the trash can. Then he noticed it, a small white envelope tucked beneath the bench. His name. Again, Luke Dawson. He quietly picked it up before Emily saw it. Inside a single sentence. 43 minutes. Imagine 43 hours. Luke closed his eyes. His hands trembled for the first time in years. This hadn't been an accident. Someone had seen Lily leave the bakery. Someone had watched the entire search. Someone had chosen not to take her. Not today. They wanted Luke to experience the fear, to understand how easily they could have. That evening, Emily stood on the balcony outside her apartment. The rain had finally stopped. Luke walked across Main Street carrying 2 cups of coffee. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Emily whispered, "I thought I'd lost her." Luke nodded. "So did I." She looked at him. "This isn't going to stop, is it?" Luke didn't answer immediately. He looked down at the folded note in his jacket pocket, then back at Emily. "No, I don't think it is." Emily took a shaky breath. "Then tell me the truth. The whole truth. No more protecting me." Luke met her eyes. "I will." Because after today, he looked toward the apartment where Lily was already asleep. "We're all in this together." Across the river, inside the abandoned warehouse, the older man watched the live traffic camera replay of Ravenwood's frantic search. He smiled faintly. "I told you." Michael Grant stood beside him. "You could have taken the child." The older man shook his head. "No. Fear lasts longer than violence." He switched off the monitor. "And now, they'll never have another peaceful day." Luke sat alone in his office long after midnight. The note lay on his desk. 43 minutes. Imagine 43 hours. He had read it so many times the words had stopped looking like words. Across from it, Lily's frame drawing still rested in its place. 3 smiling people. A bakery. A bright yellow sun. Hope. Beside it, a threat. Fear. 2 futures sitting inches apart. A quiet knock came at the door. Deputy Sarah stepped inside. "You should go home." Luke didn't look up. "I don't think I have one anymore." Sarah frowned. "What does that mean?" Luke leaned back in his chair. "It means every place I go becomes a target." Sarah remained silent. He continued, "I came here because I wanted to protect this town. Instead, I've brought danger to its front door." Sarah walked closer. "That's not what happened." Luke finally looked at her. "Isn't it? The man hunting you made that choice." "You didn't." Luke sighed. "Does Emily know about the second note?" "Notebook." "Are you going to tell her?" He looked toward the bakery across the street. A single light still glowed in the apartment above it. "I don't know." Sarah folded her arms.
"You do know."
Luke didn't answer. Because she was right. He had already made the decision. He just hadn't found the courage to say it out loud. The next morning, Emily noticed something immediately. The sheriff's office was dark. No patrol truck. No lights. No Luke. She frowned. "That's strange." Lily looked through the window. "Maybe he slept in." Emily smiled. "I don't think Sheriff Luke knows how." At 9 o'clock, Luke finally walked into the bakery. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't wearing his uniform. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. Emily set down the tray she'd been holding. "Luke, can we talk?" She nodded. "Ava." The teenager immediately understood. "I've got the front." Emily led Luke into the kitchen. "The moment the door closed She looked at him. "What happened?" Luke reached into his jacket. He placed the second note on the table. Emily read it. Once. Then again. She slowly looked up. "They watched us yesterday. Wes. They let her walk away." "Yes. They're playing with us." Luke nodded. "They're playing with me." Emily set the note down carefully. "What are you thinking?" Luke closed his eyes for a brief moment, then quietly said, "I'm leaving Ravenwood." The words seemed to echo through the kitchen. Emily stared at him. "What?"
"If I leave,
"They'll follow me." "You don't know that. I know the man we're dealing with. They want me." Not you. Emily shook her head. Nope. They've already found us? They've already threatened Lily. Luke looked away. And they'll keep doing it as long as I'm here. So your answer is to disappear. My answer is to give them what they came for. Emily felt anger rising for the first time since she'd met him. You don't get to decide that by yourself. Luke looked surprised. This isn't only your life anymore. He remained quiet. You think walking away protects Lily. Emily stepped closer. She already loves you. You leave now. You won't just break your own heart. You'll break hers. Luke swallowed hard. I'd rather she hate me than bury me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Those aren't the only two choices. At that exact moment, little footsteps approached the kitchen. The door slowly opened. Lily stood there holding 3 chocolate chip cookies. She smiled. I made snacks. Neither adult spoke. Lily looked from Emily to Luke, then back again. Why's everybody sad? Emily quickly wiped her eyes. We're just talking. Lily walked over and handed Luke one of the cookies. My grandma says cookies fix almost everything. Luke smiled despite himself. Your grandma sounds smart. She is. Lily climbed onto a chair. You know what I think? Emily smiled gently. What? I think grown-ups make things too hard. Luke laughed softly. We do. She nodded very seriously. When my friends fight, they just say they're sorry. Emily and Luke exchanged a glance. Lily continued. And then they play again. Luke looked down at the cookie in his hand. I wish life worked that way. It does. She took a bite of her own cookie. You just forget. Emily had to turn away for a second. Luke couldn't stop smiling. For just a moment, the fear disappeared. That afternoon, Emily closed the bakery an hour early. She wanted to meet with her attorney before the custody hearing. Luke insisted on driving behind her. Not because she asked. Because he wasn't taking chances anymore. As Emily's car turned onto Oak Street, Luke noticed a black sedan parked on the opposite side of the road. Engine running. Dark windows. His instincts screamed. He reached for the radio. Dawson to dispatch. Run the plate on a black sedan. Before he finished speaking, the sedan pulled away. Not fast. Not suspiciously. Just gone. Luke followed for 3 blocks, then lost it in traffic leaving town. When he returned, Emily was already at the attorney's office, safe. But Luke's uneasiness only grew stronger. Whoever was hunting him was becoming bolder. That evening, Ben Carter sat alone in his apartment in Cedar Falls. A knock came at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, a well-dressed man stood on the porch, gray at the temples. Calm. Friendly. Mr. Carter? Yes. The man smiled politely. My name is Michael Grant. I believe we have a mutual interest. Ben frowned. I don't think I know you. You don't. But I know quite a bit about Sheriff Luke Dawson. Ben's expression changed. What about him? Michael glanced toward the living room. This conversation might be easier inside. Ben hesitated only a moment, then stepped aside. He had no idea that in opening his front door, he had just invited the most dangerous man in Luke Dawson's past into his life. And with that single decision, the custody battle, the mystery from Chicago, and Emily's future were about to collide. Luke sat alone in his office long after midnight. The note lay on his desk. 43 minutes. Imagine 43 hours. He had read it so many times the words had stopped looking like words. Across from it, Lily's framed drawing still rested in its place. 3 smiling people. A bakery. A bright yellow sun. Hope. Beside it, a threat. Fear. 2 futures sitting inches apart. A quiet knock came at the door. Deputy Sarah stepped inside. You should go home. Luke didn't look up. I don't think I have one anymore. Sarah frowned. What does that mean? Luke leaned back in his chair. It means every place I go becomes a target. Sarah remained silent. He continued. I came here because I wanted to protect this town. Instead, I've brought danger to its front door. Sarah walked closer. That's not what happened. Luke finally looked at her. Isn't it? The man hunting you made that choice. You didn't. Luke sighed. Does Emily know about the second note?
No.
Are you going to tell her? He looked toward the bakery across the street. A single light still glowed in the apartment above it. I don't know. Sarah folded her arms. You do know. Luke didn't answer. Because she was right. He had already made the decision. He just hadn't found the courage to say it out loud. The next morning, Emily noticed something immediately. The sheriff's office was dark. No patrol truck. No lights. No Luke. She frowned. That's strange. Lily looked through the window. Maybe he slept in. Emily smiled. I don't think Sheriff Luke knows how. At 9 o'clock, Luke finally walked into the bakery. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't wearing his uniform. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. Emily set down the tray she'd been holding. Luke, can we talk? She nodded. Ava? The teenager immediately understood. I've got the front. Emily led Luke into the kitchen. The moment the door closed, she looked at him. What happened? Luke reached into his jacket. He placed the second note on the table. Emily read it. Once, then again. She slowly looked up. They watched us yesterday. Yes. They let her walk away. Yes. They're playing with us. Luke nodded. They're playing with me. Emily set the note down carefully. What are you thinking? Luke closed his eyes for a brief moment, then quietly said, I'm leaving Ravenwood. The words seemed to echo through the kitchen. Emily stared at him. What? If I leave, they'll follow me. You don't know that. I know the man we're dealing with. They want me? Not you. Emily shook her head. No. They've already found us. They've already threatened Lily. Luke looked away. And they'll keep doing it as long as I'm here. So your answer is to disappear. My answer is to give them what they came for. Emily felt anger rising for the first time since she'd met him. You don't get to decide that by yourself. Luke looked surprised. This isn't only your life anymore. He remained quiet. You think walking away protects Lily? Emily stepped closer. She already loves you. You leave. Now. You won't just break your own heart. You'll break hers. Luke swallowed hard. I'd rather she hate me, then bury me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Those aren't the only two choices. At that exact moment, little footsteps approached the kitchen. The door slowly opened. Lily stood there holding 3 chocolate chip cookies. She smiled. I made snacks. Neither adult spoke. Lily looked from Emily to Luke. Then back again. Why's everybody sad? Emily quickly wiped her eyes. We're just talking. Lily walked over and handed Luke one of the cookies. My grandma says cookies fix almost everything. Luke smiled despite himself. Your grandma sounds smart. She is. Lily climbed onto a chair. You know what I think? Emily smiled gently. What? I think grown-ups make things too hard. Luke laughed softly. Would do. She nodded very seriously. When my friends fight, they just say they're sorry. Emily and Luke exchanged a glance. Lily continued. And then they play again. Luke looked down at the cookie in his hand. I wish life worked that way. It does. She took a bite of her own cookie. You just forget. Emily had to turn away for a second. Luke couldn't stop smiling. For just a moment, the fear disappeared. That afternoon, Emily closed the bakery an hour early. She wanted to meet with her attorney before the custody hearing. Luke insisted on driving behind her, not because she asked, because he wasn't taking chances anymore. As Emily's car turned onto Oak Street, Luke noticed a black sedan parked on the opposite side of the road. Engine running. Dark windows. His instinct screamed. He reached for the radio. Dawson to dispatch. Run the plate on a black sedan. Before he finished speaking, the sedan pulled away. Not fast. Not suspiciously. Just gone. Luke followed for 3 blocks, then lost it in traffic leaving town. When he returned, Emily was already at the attorney's office, safe. But Luke's uneasiness only grew stronger. Whoever was hunting him was becoming bolder. That evening, Ben Carter sat alone in his apartment in Cedar Falls. A knock came at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, a well-dressed man stood on the porch, gray at the temples. Calm. Friendly. Mr. Carter? Yes. The man smiled politely. My name is Michael Grant. I believe we have a mutual interest. Ben frowned. I don't think I know you. You don't. But I know quite a bit about Sheriff Luke Dawson. Ben's expression changed. What about him? Michael glanced toward the living room. This conversation might be easier inside. Ben hesitated only a moment, then stepped aside. He had no idea that in opening his front door, he had just invited the most dangerous man in Luke Dawson's past into his life. And with that single decision, the custody battle, the mystery from Chicago, and Emily's future were about to collide. If Emily, Luke, and Lily's journey touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances. Until next time, remember this: sometimes the family we're searching for isn't the one we're born into. It's the one that chooses to stay.